The story begins with it being a beautiful sunny day. Xiao was walking around the city. The main character decided to buy himself water in such hot weather. After knocking over a bottle of water, Zheng turned his attention to the high-rise building, on which there was an advertising sign. He began to look around. To understand whether he was in the right place, an unknown male voice suddenly called out to him. The security guard at the shopping center asked him to leave the area. Zheng did not understand what was going on, and hurried to pass by him. At this moment, a pleasant female voice called out to him. Xiao turned around. He saw in front of him a rather pretty girl who asked what his name was. The main character hastened to introduce himself to the charming stranger. Zheng was haunted by one question: was it really with her that he spent last night? Xiao tried to recreate last night in his memory, but he wasn't very successful. After all, in the morning he woke up on his bed alone. At that moment a girl called him. She said that he needed to come to the Empire State Building at 10 o'clock in the morning. Xiao, who did not understand anything, became interested in the purpose of this meeting. The young lady said that they urgently needed to sign a marriage contract. Zheng remembered that the girl had black hair, or close to chestnut color. However, he could not remember the exact face, but he realized that the girl with red hair was not her. The only thing Xiao understood was that the drunk girl from yesterday was an influential person. Zheng began to brag about himself, naively believing that he would win the girl's favor, and asked her name. The girl asked him to follow her. Ignoring his question, the surprised guard asked who this guy was. Xiao decided to make fun of him, saying that he would soon be fired. The security guard, in turn, could not understand what was happening. After which they headed inside a multi-story building. The girl did not like Zheng. Xiao literally annoyed her with his behavior. Passing by the paintings, he began to admire them excessively. At the same time, he reacted to almost everything like a Neanderthal. Suddenly Zheng asked her how much she received for her work. The girl proudly stated that her annual salary is about 2 million. Xiao was shocked by this figure. The girl asked why men always look down on women. The main character assumed that she was very rich, which he hastened to inquire about. In response, the girl reacted rather nervously, asking him not to approach her. But Zheng also could not resist, saying that given her status, she was asking him to pay for the apartment. The stranger replied that she would never like someone like him. Besides, it's her boss who asked her to bring him here, and she's just doing her job. The girl pointed to her boss's door. Xiao didn't think for long. In just a few minutes, Zheng managed to completely bore the young lady. After which, the main character calmly lit his cigarette. Then he stated that he had drunk too much faith and therefore does not remember everything that happened well. The girl literally lost her temper and began loudly insulting him. However, Xiao liked to bully the girl and asked her to serve him coffee without sugar. And he headed to her boss's door, opening which, a bright light spilled onto him. Zheng narrowed his eyes and walked inside, where he saw an unknown madam at the window, and also her subordinate, to whom she was actively explaining something. The main character did not know what to expect from this situation, and looked at the dark-haired girl. Suddenly the man turned around and met Zheng's gaze. For a while, Xiao again turned his gaze to the mysterious stranger. He began to remember her physique. The girl continued to look out the window. At a certain moment, she turned and fixed her gaze on Zheng, who, in turn, was amazed by her beauty, and finally found the reason for his drunken insanity. Xiao said that next time, they will go to a 5-star hotel. The young lady asked lawyer Dan to provide the young man with a contract. The lawyer gave Zheng the contract and noted that the marriage contract is legally binding for the duration of the agreement, adding that the party that violated the terms of the contract will incur legal obligations in the form of compensation. Xiao began to carefully read the contract and drew attention to the girl's personal data. Then he asked if she was the same icy beauty, the Empire State Building. Noticing that she is 2 years older than him, and at 27 years old the girl is already a CEO. Hinting at the misappropriation of the position, the girl began to boil. But lawyer Deng calmed her down and hurried Zheng to sign the contract. Xiao said that he could sign this agreement, but he does not like one point. The business lady asked what exactly he didn't like. Zheng replied that during the entire marriage contract, they may not fulfill marital duties, and this does not seem fair to him. The girl could not stand Zhao's boorish behavior and grabbed him by the shirt. At this moment, she remembered several shots from yesterday evening, and the fact that her only way out of the situation is sudden marriage. Then she asked the impudent Zheng what qualities he had to demand such a thing. Xiao gently took her hand and said that she was beautiful in her anger, and he liked her more and more. The girl unexpectedly slapped him in the face. Zheng jokingly said that since she beats him, it means she loves him. The lady nervously asked the lawyer for a pen, then turned to Xiao as he left, and she demanded that he sign the contract. Zheng continued to amuse himself, saying that she already missed him. Ignoring his behavior, the girl asked where he worked. Xiao stated that he had been offered a lot of things, but he was in two minds. The young lady realized that in fact, the main character is unemployed. In this connection, I asked my lawyer to find him a vacancy. Dan stated that a cleaning lady in the marketing department resigned because her daughter-in-law became pregnant. Hearing this, Xiao was indignant and said that he was not going to work as a cleaner. Then the girl asked Dan if there was a place in the security department. The lawyer rustled some papers, then replied that there was only one vacancy left in this department. The girl ordered Zheng to start work from today. Xiao hurried to ask the nervous girl a question about her zodiac sign. The lady calmly replied, "Maiden." Zheng said that this is no longer entirely true. Initially, the young lady didn't care, and didn't even understand Xiao's humor. But a few seconds later, the girl screamed and kicked Zheng out of her office. Going out into the hall, the main character drew attention to a large number of people who were rushing somewhere. Xiao began to make fun of Lawyer Deng, saying that he was not a very good lawyer. The lawyer smiled and hurried Zheng to go to the security department, where he can directly begin his work, which is what Xiao did. Having opened the door, he did not find anyone. There was deathly silence in the room. However, suddenly an unknown girl ran at him and kicked him. Zheng could not understand what was happening and why someone was attacking him. Having parried the angry girl's blow, Xiao grabbed her leg and began to hold it. Thus, the unknown girl stood for several seconds on one leg. The main character, in turn, looked at the girl and broke into a smile, after which he noticed that it was not difficult to block her blow. The hot-tempered employee demanded that he let go of her leg. Then she looked menacingly at Zheng and ordered him to follow her. They headed towards her office, through the crowd of security officers. The girl confidently sat down on her chair and threw her legs on the table, saying that Xiao was 5 minutes late and he was inactive. Zheng said that he has not even been officially hired yet. The lady replied that she didn't care what connections he had with the boss, and everyone who dared to annoy her would go the same way. All the employees literally shouted in unison where exactly such a person would go. Only the main character did not understand what was happening and why everyone was so unscrupulous. After which, she leaned over to Xiao and asked if he had any questions. Zheng, without hesitation, assured her that he had no problems or questions. The girl responded by demanding that he address her as Captain Bai. Then she called employee Tang Ming and ordered him to immerse Xiao in the work process, and tell him about the rules in the security department, as well as provide him with a uniform. Tang realized that Zheng had connections in the Emirate State Building, as he had recently heard about it from Captain Bai. Xiao asked Ming what specific connections he had here. Tang replied that Lawyer Deng had personally warned him about Zheng's arrival. In addition, his aunt works in the HR department. Xiao said that he is counting on Ming in the future. But Tang said that it was useless, because he had already provoked Captain Bai, and now she would torture him to death. Zheng said that he would not be afraid of some girl who was probably abandoned by her boyfriend, and that's why she lashes out at everyone. Suddenly Ming covered Zhao's mouth with his hand and said that he was too loud. Tang told Zheng that Bai was the only female commander in the army, but because of her family, she joined the police. And when she was fired for beating up a suspect, Bai was hired here, and besides, she is the champion of the Pearl City fighting tournament. Adding that most of all she hates people with connections, and forbids them to talk to the opposite sex. Xiao thought for a moment, after which he stated that this woman is not who she says she is. Surprised, Tang Ming did not understand what he meant and asked again. Zheng decided to joke and called her Madame Chuan. Tang laughed. Late in the evening, Xiao headed to his home in splendid isolation. Having lit a cigarette, he walked thinking about his life, in which there was nothing, neither love nor a car. Approaching the house where he rented an apartment, Zheng suddenly looked up. He saw a pile of suitcases and bags flying at him. Xiao was taken aback. Everything happened too quickly, and Zheng was literally overwhelmed with things. The main character began to shout out his displeasure, and a woman appeared in the window. who hastened in a boorish manner to inform Xiao to take his things and not appear here again. Zheng told Aunt Zhang that they had previously agreed to delay payment of the apartment, but the elderly woman flatly refused to listen to him and closed the window, so Xiao was left without an overnight stay. He decided to visit his newly made bride, who lived in a luxurious house. Zheng knocked on her door. The girl asked who was there. Thinking that little men dared to skip school again, she opened the door. On the threshold, she saw Xiao, and without allowing him to say a word, she immediately closed the front doors. After which she headed to the living room, where Zheng was already sitting on the sofa. She asked how he ended up here. Xiao urged her not to worry about it. The stubborn girl continued to demand that he leave immediately. The impudent Zheng said that since they were a married couple, he would stay with her for a year, or maybe more. The enraged wife asked him to leave the house. Xiao refused to do this. Then the girl threw a mug at him. Zheng said that he was actually kicked out by his landlady and now has no home. The young lady replied that it was none of her business who kicked him out and where, and threatened the police. Xiao smiled and said that the police would not do anything to him, because they were a married couple. The girl tensed up and said that they were only married according to documents. Zheng said that the most contradictory thing in the world is a woman's heart, and as soon as they got married, the wife already grew cold. The young lady was not going to tolerate his antics and offered to give him money for a hotel. Xiao said that he would not take money from his wife. The girl was going to call the security, but Zheng said that in that case he would show them the marriage contract. As soon as he angered her, the girl realized that she couldn't get rid of Xiao so easily. Zheng said that now she will not need to hire people to monitor him. After all, he will live with her. The girl looked at Xiao in surprise and asked how long he had known about this. The main character noticed that she may have trained people, but it was not difficult to notice them. Finally, the missus gave in and said that she could shelter Zheng, just for a few days. Under certain conditions, he is not allowed to go up to her and not touch anything with his hands. Xiao Zheng assured her that there would be no problem with this, and the wife headed to her room. At the same time, slamming the door loudly, Xiao realized that she was really angry. At night, Zheng went to bed. Suddenly he was woken up by a phone call from Ming. He said that he should hurry up to come to work. Because Boss Bai is furious, Xiao said that it's not even 8 in the morning, and they have to work by 9. However, Tang explained that the rest of the staff needed to be there by 9 in the morning, and the security department was working according to Captain Bai's decision. Zheng woke up rather reluctantly and headed to the bathroom, where, after brushing my teeth, I thought that this was not entirely fair to the security officers. But it was better not to argue with the authorities, and Xiao hurried to work. At the bus stop, Zheng lit another cigarette and thought about his wife. Upon arriving at work, Xiao met Tan, who said that he had come up with an excuse for being late. Allegedly Zheng had a fight with his wife. Xiao asked how he knew about his marriage. Ming was perplexed and asked if he was really married. Zheng proudly stated that his wife worked here at New Arcana Group. Tan was surprised and said that if the boss found out about this, they could be fired, because office romances are prohibited here. In response, Xiao smiled and said that no one could fire his wife. Then Ming asked who his wife really was. Zheng said that it was Lin Xuyin. Tan sighed with relief, declaring that he was not a child and would not believe it. As they were leaving the locker room, they suddenly ran into Captain Bai, who noticed that Xiao was late for work on the first day, and she would not look at his relationship with Sister Hong. Zheng continued to make a fool of himself, declaring that he could not sleep, in anticipation of his first day at work. Captain Bai pointed out that he should not work in the security department with such eloquence. Xiao said that he always dreamed of working side by side with someone like Captain Bai. The boss noted his poor brain activity, because she meant that he was not welcome here. At this moment, Tang stood up for Zheng, saying that this was just the first time, and nothing bad had happened. Bai looked at them menacingly and ordered Xiao to follow her. Ming sympathized with Zheng, giving his blessing. Zheng did not understand anything, and he asked Tan what terrible thing could happen now. Entering the gym, they headed to the rest of the department employees. Zheng looked at Captain Bai with a smile and asked how she wanted to play. In response, Boss Bai ordered Xiao to do 200 push-ups. The main character asked to give him time for a light warm-up. Captain Bai also noted that he would be doing push-ups together with another department employee, who, in turn, naively believed that he could easily beat Zheng. Xiao suggested that he make at least a minimum bet on push-ups. The confident employee asked what exactly he wanted to bet on. Breaking into a smile as always, Zheng replied that he would bet 100 yuan on who could finish doing push-ups the fastest. However, the guy got a taste for it and offered to play for 500 yuan in return. Xiao gladly accepted the terms of the game and hurried Captain Bai to announce the start of the competition. Meanwhile, all the security personnel crowded around them. Bai announced the start. The men immediately began the exercise. After some time, the main character was already counting 110 push-ups from the floor, while another employee was at the limit of his strength, and only did 55 push-ups. Captain Bai and the others were shocked by the newcomer's physical fitness. Zheng, in turn, demanded money from the employee who lost in the competition. The guy naturally gave him the money, saying that he should have changed the rules of the game. After which, with the face of a winner, Xiao turned to Captain Bai and asked what next. The evil boss declared that the test was over and he passed the test. Zheng walked with a confident gait to his workplace, but the captain suddenly stopped him, saying that she did not allow him to leave. Xiao turned around and said that he took the test and therefore passed the test. Bai replied that it was just the first round, and it was not easy to get into the security department. Zheng immediately asked what the next test would be. Because he is eager to have fun, Bai noticed that he is extremely arrogant. After which they approached the ring, where the most experienced veteran Lu Qiming was fighting. He thought that the victory would be easy, and invited Xiao to play for 10,000 yuan. The rules were very simple. If Zheng wins the battle, then he remains working in the security department and receives 10,000. If he loses, he writes a statement of his own free will and gives the money. Bai asked him since when did they have such rules. Qiming replied that he just wanted to teach the upstart a lesson, but not to injure him. Bai urged Zheng to be careful, because no one in their department likes people with connections. And if he leaves right now, Bai will pay him a month's salary as compensation. Xiao replied, if she pays him money all her life, then he agrees. Otherwise, he didn't intend to waste his time and jumped into the ring, where the warmed-up Qiming was already waiting for him, who declared that Zheng would pay for his arrogance. He asked the main character if he was really ready for the fight. Absolutely relaxed Xiao replied that he was ready to earn money. Annoying the veteran in every possible way, Simon said that the guy clearly overestimates himself. Captain Bai understood perfectly well that Lu was serious and could hurt Zheng. However, what happened next was beyond people's heads. Xiao literally began beating the Qiming veteran while constantly dodging his blows. Lu began to realize that he couldn't cope with this guy so easily. Zheng stated that Lu would not be able to keep his 10,000 yuan. In response, Qiming said that Xiao did not have enough strength to defeat him. Lu again attacked the main character, but could not hit him. Zheng calmly continued to dodge his blows, and at a certain moment grabbed Lu. Then he lifted him over his head and simply threw him out of the ring. Qiming, in turn, landed extremely painfully on the floor. The security department employees present were at a loss. Their frightened faces spoke for themselves. Bai also did not expect such a turn of events. Xiao leaned against the ropes and lit a cigarette, reminding Lu of his duty. Then he asked the angry Bai if he had become a member of the security department. Zheng suggested that the final test could be a fight with the boss, which is what he asked her about. But Bai said that this was not necessary, since he had truly proven his qualifications. Xiao smiled and said that he thought so, because the captain cannot refuse his words. The boss stated that from now on she is his boss, and if he is ordered to go east, then he is obliged to comply with these requirements. Adding that women are extremely vindictive, Zheng hastened to ask her forgiveness for his arrogance. Walking out of the gym, Xiao unexpectedly met his new friend, Tang, who was surprised and began to wonder if Zheng was okay, suggesting that Xiao might have suffered greatly from Captain Bai. Zheng said that everything was fine with him, and he was not a weakling at all. Ming hastened to interrupt him, saying that he shouldn't brag like that because Captain Bai wants to kick him out of the department, and asked if Lu had beaten him. Xiao realized that Tang knew about everything and did not warn him. This is what he accused Mina of, who immediately began to make excuses to him, saying that he wouldn't care, could not help him in this situation. After which, Xiao hurried to hand over the cigarettes to Zheng and calmly lit a cigarette. Then he stated that he did not believe in Tang's betrayal, and that Qiming was just an ant to him. Ming smiled and said that he already understood this. Meanwhile, Zheng turned his attention to his clothes. The main character asked why he took off his uniform, assuming that Tan wanted to leave work early. Min replied that the company had assigned him to accompany the finance department to collect debts. Xiao thought he worked in security, but apparently for them they are cheap labor. Tang explained to Zheng that he actually signed up to be an escort because it was the only way he could interact with girls, especially one goddess from the finance department. Xiao naturally asked to go with him. Ming glanced at the cigarettes that Zheng had already put in his pocket. Xiao immediately returned the pack of cigarettes to him. Tang began to talk about the situation in New Arcana, and about how difficult it is for them to cross paths with the opposite sex at work. Zheng again asked Ming to sign him up for the night shift. Naturally Tan agreed to show him this world, and they shook hands. Min said that they are now sailing in the same boat, so they must help each other. Speaking about the manager of the finance department, who was almost the most beautiful girl in their company. In addition, she has a good character. Xiao asked if she is really as good as Tang describes. Min began to behave like a child, looking around and whispering that he would definitely show it to him. Then he hurried Zheng to go change clothes to accompany him. Joyful Xiao immediately headed to the locker room, looking forward to communicating with the girls. The impatient Ming continued to urge Zheng, saying that everything needed to be done quickly. After a certain time, Xiao and Tang were already waiting for the young girls at the car. The Do stated that this time they really caused problems for the security department. Min replied that their department was created to help other departments solve their problems. Lan asked who was helping him this time, hinting at Su. Tang hurried to introduce the new security officer and his friend Zheng. The main character suspected something about one of the girls and looked closely at her. The girl, in turn, suggested that the authorities might not be very friendly towards him. Xiao Zheng hastened to convince her otherwise, saying that everyone treats him quite normally. Arriving at a certain bar, they all hurried inside together, where on the bar counter, the employees of the establishment were literally sleeping. Xiao approached them and politely asked where their boss was. One of them raised his head and replied that the bar was closed now and they should come in the evening for a drink. Zheng said that they didn't come for drinks and calmly lit a cigarette. The employee looked at the confident guy and asked what they needed. The main character took a drag and said that they had come to collect a debt. Another employee was completely scared and asked if they were from Archon Group. Zheng confidently answered that it was from this organization that they came. The employee hurried after the boss. Xiao invited the pretty Lan to sit down and wait for their superiors. The girl from the finance department was grateful to Zheng for his hard work. Xiao lit another cigarette and said that Manager Lan was too kind. Suddenly she noticed Zheng's accent and asked if he was local. The main character stated that he was from Pearl City. The girl smiled, asking if his first high school was in Pearl City. Xiao was surprised and asked her if Lan was also a graduate of this school. The manager replied that she graduated in 2004. Zheng stated that he graduated a year after her. In fact, Xiao Zheng was an influential figure in the first high school, as he won the attention of the teachers and students. In addition, he always stood up for the weak, who were bullied by others, and was a reliable person. Xiao stated that at the time he thought it was right, so he acted that way. Obviously, Manager Lan was infatuated with the young and strong Zhen. At this moment, Ming and another manager approached them and realized that this was not a very suitable environment. Lu Mei, nicknamed the Black Rose, also hurried to them. She called out to Lan. Mei was surprised that Lan still decided to come to the bar and have fun. Tang, meanwhile, was literally taken aback by Lu's appearance and charm. Manager Lan asked her what brought Mei to this bar. Black Rose replied that she was one of the shareholders of this establishment, and therefore, with all questions they usually turned to her. Lan noticed that the sixth master, who is not related to Lu, invested in this bar. Mei said that a month ago, the sixth master gave her 51% of the shares of this establishment, and now she is the boss of this bar. Do noted her ability to think ahead. Lu Mei asked what Manager Lan was talking about now. The girl explained that the master was unable to properly manage the bar, and as a result acquired debts, and if Lu acquired shares at that time. This means that she was very lucky, Mei replied. In business there are always costs, even if there is profit. The assistant handed Lan the documents, and the manager hurried to present Mei with the contract, which stated that the sixth master owed her organization 20 million yuan. Lu confirmed the information. However, she stated that the services provided by the New Arcana company do not meet the quality level and cause damage to the bar. Lan noted that blaming her company for its own losses is absurd. Lu said that the sixth master would most likely not make the final payment. The manager retorted, saying that Phantom situation had nothing to do with their company, they provided services and did not pay for them. That's the problem. Mei again spoke about their unsuccessful actions, after which the sixth master became an unhappy person. And the master made it clear that he would pay a little later. Lan asked when exactly this would happen. The absolutely cold-blooded Lu replied that as soon as Phantom starts making a profit. The dose stated that the Phantom Bar, at best, would cease to exist, otherwise they would suffer even greater losses. Mei replied that the conversation was over for today, especially since she conveyed the words of the sixth master. After which, Lu hurried to hide in her office and asked the managers to leave this establishment. Ultimately, they were left with nothing and headed to the car. Ming began to say that he would gather the entire security department and they would put pressure on this Mei. Lan was against such a plan. And only the main character calmly corresponded with his friend on the phone, where he asked him for a favor. Then Zheng called him and, having learned some news, replied that he would be there soon. Tang turned his attention to Xiao and asked what happened and if he needed help. Zheng replied that everything was fine and he would sort it out himself, asking Ming to give him half a day off from work. Tang replied that he would cover him in front of Captain Bai, and urged him to be extremely careful. A few minutes later, Xiao returned to the Phantom Bar, where he saw an interesting picture. The sixth master unceremoniously pestered Mei, who, in turn, was not eager to reciprocate his feelings. Black Rose said that with just a few words and the reputation of the sixth master, she was able to drive away the new arcana. The master told her that they would call her when the money was collected, but Mei wanted to get her share today, which is what she asked him to do. The old man said that if she had dinner with him tonight, he would transfer the money to her in the morning. Lu distantly hinted to him that she did not intend to continue the evening with him, and simply helped solve the problem with new arcana. However, the sixth master said that he would give her 1,000,000 yuan for having dinner with him. At this moment, Zheng decided to ask why specifically 1,000,000. The sixth master came to his senses and, seeing the young guy in front of him, asked who he was. Black Rose was also surprised by Zhao's presence and asked what he needed. Hinting that he missed his big sister too quickly, Zheng replied that he would not be able to overcome such a psychological barrier. The enraged sixth master demanded the guy watch his tongue. Then, Xiao began to look into Lu Mei's terrible past, which was shrouded in darkness. Zheng lit a cigarette and said that her real name was Lu Shuzhen, who studied at Pearl City High School. She provided services not only to her classmates, but was also ready to work for grades, and then moved up the career ladder. The sixth master asked Lu if she was not Zhao's mistress. Gradually, Mei ran out of patience and wanted to kill the upstart. Xiao acted completely calm and relaxed while talking about the Black Rose's past, which, in turn, denied everything Zhen said and asked the master to believe her. But the sixth master said that he did not trust anyone and pushed Mei away from him. The guards with clubs were already waiting for Xiao. The main character remained calm. Lu stated that she doesn't care where he came from and who he is, as well as what his goal is. She's also not interested. But today she will not let him return home alive. Zheng realized that he could not avoid a fight. The bodyguards were already approaching. One of them took out a knife and smiled, looking at Xiao. Zheng continued to smoke a cigarette, suggesting that she had done quite a few stupid things in this way. Mei got tired of listening to him and immediately ordered her thugs to kill Xiao. As a result, they hurried to do it, but did not think about how everything could turn out. The main character prepared for battle and defiantly spat out the cigarette butt to the side. 3 big men ran up to Zheng with lightning speed and tried to hit him. One of them swung a knife at Xiao, but failed to hit him. As a result, Zheng dodged the blow and twisted his arm. After which, he grabbed the scoundrel by the hair and sharply pulled him down. Thus, he literally crushed his head into the floor while the others tried in vain to harm Xiao. Suddenly, the main character jumped up and pushed away from the 2 bandits, thus, finding himself behind them, which only angered the guards more. To the first bodyguard, Zheng made a lightning sweep. Then he picked up a glass bottle from the floor and struck the second guard with it. As a result, the bottle broke on his head and shattered into small fragments. The sixth master gradually began to sweat, realizing how strong Zheng was. Mei was also scared to death. Meanwhile, Xiao beat up all the bodyguards and turned to the master with Lu, stating that they were lucky to find him at this time, because earlier they would have had to die. Zheng picked up a knife and approached Mei. She, in turn, began to beg for mercy, saying that she would do anything for him, but Xiao didn't need anything from her. He put a knife to Lu's cheek and said that he would cut her beautiful face. It seemed that Mei was about to cry. Zheng ordered her to quickly get out of here. The Black Rose at the same moment began to run away in panic, thinking that at some point she would take revenge on him. Suddenly Xiao stopped her. Lu turned around and asked what he wanted. At that moment, the main character threw a cutlass at her, which stuck in the door, near her ear. Frightened, Mei frantically looked at the knife and began to cry. Zheng said that if she decided to take revenge on him, then he could just as easily find out where she lived. And then she was in trouble. Lu began to turn her head and say that she would not do this. Then she asked to let her go. Xiao said that at the moment she was free. Mei instantly ran out the door. Zheng lit another cigarette, and noticed that she was not attractive even as a woman. After which he turned to the sixth master and asked if he was right. The master, sweating from nerves, replied that naturally he was right, that was out of the question. Xiao said that the master had already owed 20 million to the new Arcana company for 6 months. Zheng leaned sharply towards the sixth master and asked when he intended to pay the bills. Putting his cigarette butt in his face, the old man began to assure him that he would pay everything. Xiao stated that interest must also be taken into account, and asked what the annual interest rate on the loan was. The old man answered stutteringly, about 25. Zheng began to count the total amount. Without hesitation, Xiao said that the sixth master must pay 25 million yuan. The old man was shocked by this figure and said that he would not have enough cash now. Zheng again threatened him. The master nevertheless gave in, saying that everything would be ready soon. At this time the assistant asked Lan what to do with Mr. Wang's debt. After all, he is not going to pay the bills, and the money needs to be returned. The manager replied that she would tell the boss everything later, urging the assistant to do her job. Suddenly, Lan's work phone rang, telling her some startling news. Namely, that Mr. Wang took the initiative and would soon pay their company 25 million yuan. Lin Shuyin immediately notified her boss, who said that Wang only owed 20 million. Lan replied that she herself was surprised at this figure, since according to the contract, he really owed less money. And even if we take into account the losses for 6 months, he needs to return 20,800,000. Shuyin asked her subordinate not to interfere in this matter, saying that she would sort it out herself. After hanging up, Lan wondered how this was possible. They only talked to this Lu today. And now the sixth master is taking the initiative and wants to return the money, even in larger quantities. Moreover, he specifically hired Mei to settle all issues regarding payment. Suddenly it dawned on her. Lan thought that Xiao, a newcomer to the security department, was involved in this. The manager asked Li to immediately go to the HR department. Qiming heard some voices in the corridor and headed towards the guys. Seeing that it was Ming and Xiao, Lu became furious. Meanwhile, Zheng and Tang agreed to go to the cafeteria together. An angry Qiming came closer to them and loudly called out to Xiao, inquiring why Zheng doesn't wear a uniform, because if he doesn't want to do this, then it's time for him to leave their department. Min stood up for his friend, saying that this was not his prerogative and that he should not pester people. Lu replied that he would soon report to Captain Bai about Tang's bad behavior. In response, Min said that he was not afraid of him and if he wanted to, he could at least sue him. Xiao pulled Tang by the shirt and urged him not to engage in common-sense dialogue with a stupid person. Qiming stood opposite them, with an extremely stupid expression on his face. Zheng said that he should be less prejudiced. Lu really looked like he didn't understand what he was talking about, and the only thing his brain generated was to threaten Xiao with physical violence. After which, Qiming pulled himself together and left in an unknown direction. Ming noted that this Lu had already annoyed everyone and deserved a good thrashing. The main character decided to remain silent, but mentally he was in solidarity with Tan. At this time, Manager Lan began to actively study Zheng's life. After reading the information about him, Xiao was 25 years old, a native of Mingzhu City, and a high school student. After graduating from school, he entered military service. Lan began to remember the events of 7 years ago, when they were in their senior year of Mingzhu First High School. High school students pestered her because they never had enough female attention, and Zheng, like a true knight, protected her from the villains, beating one of them with a bat. There was no need to touch the rest, since they instantly abandoned their leader. Little Do watched what was happening. she remembered her savior well, while the rest of the thugs rushed to run away, saying that it was the same guy again. Then the handsome savior turned to her and asked how she was feeling. Lan replied that she was fine. Xiao urged her to be more careful in the future. After this incident, little Do came to class first, and she left fresh milk on Zheng's table to please him. Then she calmly sat down in her seat and pretended to be reading a book. In fact, she listened as his school friends tried to guess who kept leaving him milkshake, saying that someone obviously likes him or even more, because no one would just give him milk. Lan secretly peeked out from behind the book and watched Zheng's reaction as he enjoyed the cool drink. This was more than 7 years ago. Lan could not even think that fate would bring them together again. After all, in her school days, Xiao was a majestic emperor for her, and she could only imagine what he had to go through over the years. The dough literally filled her head with the main character, and could not think about anything else. Meanwhile, Ming and Xiao were sitting in the cafeteria and talking about where they studied. As it turned out, Tan studied at the 9th high school, which was considered second-rate, because sometimes there weren't even enough teachers there. But Min stated that when he went to this school, everything was fine there. Zheng began to make fun of Tang, saying that the genius of the first high school was sitting opposite him, and his soul has been hurting since he found out that Min studied at that terrible school. Tang asked what this first high school gave him. Xiao began to be ironic again. Ming said that if he was such a genius and went to the best school, why wasn't Zheng accepted into the university? Xiao confidently stated that the university could not teach him anything and it was a waste of time. Ming noted that in fact, not many people dared to attend the first high school. At that moment, another employee from the security department heard them and asked why not everyone could visit this school. Zheng replied that this was obvious, because someone like Tang would not have kept up with academic progress at school, and would not have been able to communicate with geniuses. Ming could not stand it again and called on the self-confident Xiao to stop talking about him like that. Zheng stated that he was just joking and nothing more, asking him to look at the girls in the window, adding that nowadays, people really don't understand jokes. Xiao looked out of the window and didn't understand where these girls were in such a hurry. In the crowd of girls, Zheng suddenly recognized his wife Lin Xuyin, and from the expression on her face, Xiao could tell that she was extremely angry with someone. The main character suggested that she was in trouble, or that someone had offended her. Ming asked what Zheng was staring at, and instantly leaned against the window, where he saw President Lin. Tan said that most likely someone would be fired today because the boss was very angry. Guessing that it might even be because of Wang's debt, Xiao said that Lin is not that ruthless. Min replied that she had to be like this so that others would not consider her weak, adding that he had heard about the highest echelons of the company, who live at the expense of one person and secretly help another. Because of this, many people could suffer. Zheng thought about it, saying that this was a cause for concern. Ten urged him to calm down, because it was clearly not something they should be worried about. After which, Min jumped up and said that it was time for them to go since it was time to go around. After all, Captain Bai gave them a lunch break, half an hour earlier than the rest, which Zheng categorically disagreed with, saying that it was inhumane on her part. Tan said that no one can contradict her, and if Xiao disobeys her, she will fire him. The main character confidently stated that she could not fire him, because according to his observations, she is most likely in love with him. Ming said that this could not be, and they began to fool around with Zheng. At that moment, behind Tang, who said that Bai doesn't even distinguish between genders, the captain passed by. Xiao tried to signal the stupid Ming to shut up. Ten asked why he was blinking at him, assuming that Zheng got a speck in his eye or suddenly began to have a nervous tic. It was only when Xiao shouted to him that Captain Bai was behind him that Ming understood everything. He instantly became covered in sweat, and was afraid to even turn around, while trembling like a puppy. After which, he still plucked up courage and turned around and saluted her. In response, Bai asked him to come to the gym at the end of the working day. Tang began to laugh hysterically. The captain said that Lan asked them to come to her. Xiao and Tang asked her in surprise if she really meant Manager Lan. Ming's hysteria instantly disappeared, and in its place a hellish panic began. He said that he would soon have to pack his things and quit. Zheng hastened to reassure him, saying that she would not fire them, because now they depend on Manager Lan, who, in turn, thanked Tan and Xiao for their cooperation, saying that Wang had already paid off all his debts, even more than that. Stupid Ming asked in surprise whether the sixth master really paid. Lan said that she was also surprised by his sudden change of position, and invited Zheng and Ming to dinner. She asked to choose a restaurant at their discretion. The guys were embarrassed, and Tan said that they didn't do anything. Lan said that President Shuin ordered them to be rewarded to boost their morale. The manager asked them to decide on a place where they could have dinner. The main character said that he wanted to taste the Lonely Pearl, because he has lived in Mingzhu for more than 20 years, but has never been to Lonely Pearl. Manager Lan was taken aback, but did not show it, calmly agreeing to reserve tables there for them. After some time, they left Lan's office, and Ming stated that the manager was clearly interested in Xiao. Zheng was surprised and asked Tang why he decided so. Ming urged him not to pretend, because Lan was looking at him the entire time they were there, and now everything depends on Xiao. They started fooling around like little children again. Then Zheng announced proudly, "This is all because he is a real man, and women love leaders." After a certain time, Zheng was already standing on the pier and admiring the beautiful ship called the Lonely Pearl. As the ship sailed closer, Xiao began to admire its grandeur and enormous size. However, he was sorry that Ming could not come, because Captain Bai was waiting for him in the gym. Therefore, the main character hurried to enjoy the luxurious floating palace. Rising onto the deck, Zheng began to look around. Xiao caught the sidelong glances of wealthy people, and heard what they said about him, calling him a poor man. The doe watched from the sidelines and could not understand how he came to such a life, because in childhood she looked up to him. Zheng, in turn, distanced himself from those around him. He was not pleased to hear such things about himself. Although he tried not to pay attention to it, in the meantime, Manager Lan hurriedly approached him. The girl looked like a princess in a beautiful evening dress, while Xiao was dressed in what he wore to work. Lan asked why he didn't go inside but was waiting for her here. Zheng replied that he didn't have enough money to enter. Lan forgot about the ticket, which cost 1,000 yuan. The manager said that she was treating him and they went inside, where they sat down at their table. The waiters immediately approached them and asked them to place their order. Xiao chose ravioli with duck and a portion of casserole. Lan was surprised by Zheng's good pronunciation, because the menu had dishes in English and French. She asked him how long he had been studying languages. Xiao replied that he had only learned a few words, but he had an inclination for languages. Lan noticed that ordinary people did not spend their time learning various languages, and asked where else Zheng worked. Xiao replied that he took on all possible jobs, and mostly relied on his physical abilities, and also worked at a construction site. In addition, he dropped out of school and could not get a good job. Lan said that it did not matter, and the main thing was to go towards his goal. Zheng asked if she had a friend who dropped out of school and got a good job. Manager Lan looked at Xiao thoughtfully and then said, "Does he really not remember her?" Zheng stared at Lan in surprise, as if he was trying to remember. At that moment a stranger put his hand on his shoulder, who told Miss Doe that this guy probably has ulterior motives. The main character said that all this time he was thinking who was behind his back, but it turned out to be Boss Do. He remembered how Xiao came up with nicknames for people, and never once paid for his actions. How patted Zheng on the shoulder and decided to join them. Manager Lan was categorically against his presence and asked him to leave, but Du refused to do this, saying that he just wanted to remember the past with Xiao. After which he asked Zheng if he would mind how joining their dinner. Xiao Zheng confidently stated that he was more than against it, but Du Hao did not listen to him, urging Xiao to calm down if he really is still upset with him because of that school story. Zheng rudely asked why he was sniffing about him like a dog. Du stated that classmate Lan had no manners at all. In fact, Hao harbored a grudge against them all these years, because Lan did not choose him precisely because of Xiao. Zheng was shocked by this information and asked Lan if she was really his classmate. The girl was sad to realize that the one she loved had completely forgotten and did not remember her. After which Lan said that she was in the 3rd year of high school twice, and was in the same class with him. Discouraged, Xiao wondered why he didn't remember her at all. Du replied that in high school, Zheng only interacted with costume dolls, and he did not care about the disciplined Lan. Having always strived for knowledge, Xiao began to actively rummage through her memory. Looking at Lan again, Zheng was still able to remember that little girl. Xiao asked if she was the same girl who was sitting behind him. The doe, in turn, silently nodded her head, burning with the awkwardness of the moment. Zheng jumped out of his chair and extended his hand to her, saying that in the future she could contribute to his promotion. After all, they have had such a connection since childhood, which completely angered Hao, who stated that New Arcana is the kingdom of women, and only in the security department there are men. Xiao replied that he saw nothing wrong with being a security guard, since in the prosperity of the company, absolutely all positions, without exception, are important. Du Hao realized that Zheng really worked in the security department and laughed. Having said that Lan Xian is the CFO, and after listing on the stock market, she will become a multi-millionaire. This means that she paid for the entire dinner and the boat ticket. Lan once again asked how to leave, saying that he wasn't invited to dinner and he's talking complete nonsense. Du understood everything from her reaction, and noticed that he was not mistaken about the ticket and dinner. After which, he asked the main character to look out the window where a beautiful sports car stood. Hao said that this is a Ferrari, which he easily bought, and Xiao will have to go 30 years without eating or drinking to buy the same one. And before talking about Lan, he should think about his importance. Zheng asked about the car, at what speed Du drives the Ferrari. Hao thought for a moment, then answered that it was about 150 miles per hour. Xiao took out a cigarette and said that the most attractive thing about such a car is its aggressive design. And when you start such a car, the blood truly boils in your veins, while revealing the character of a person. Lan had no idea that there were so many nuances in sports cars. Zheng noted that he could give a detailed introductory course about such machines. Du Hao said that he just wanted to buy himself a new car, and asked Xiao to teach him how to choose a car. Zheng replied that it was very easy. Suddenly a roar sounded behind Hao. Turning around, Du saw how his subordinates got drunk and simply collapsed on the floor unconscious. One picked up a bottle of alcohol, but couldn't drink it, saying he felt bad. The other one literally felt bad. Hao got up from the table and asked Xiao, does he know what awaits them for such behavior? Zheng lit a cigarette. Then, spreading his hands, Du ordered his guards to follow him, declaring that it was time for a little educational work. Lan became worried and asked Xiao to continue their dinner elsewhere. However, Zheng said that the dishes had already been ordered, and besides, their classmate Du decided to give them a show, adding that Hao told the truth, but if Xiao had not accepted reality as it is, then there would be no core in him. After which the main character stated that he had an interesting thought. It will be difficult for him to eat table food after such a magnificent dinner, and so next time he treats Do. When she had accumulated the required amount, Xin laughed in response. Meanwhile, Hao's people were literally crawling on the floor and even wanted to continue drinking. One of them crawled up to Du and fell asleep at his feet. Hao looked at him angry, while the drunken subordinate muttered something inaudibly under his breath, and he asked to pour him another glass of wine, which only angered Hao even more, who kicked him hard and ordered him to get out of his way. Du began to look around and noticed that everyone was paying attention to him. Since Hao was furious, he tried to control himself. Du realized that at some point he overdid it, since he had already hooked other people. In addition, he could not shake the feeling that completely different people were sitting at the tables, which weren't there before, and he was only gone for a few seconds. At this moment, one of those whom Hao accidentally touched asked why he hit him. After all, his back now hurts. Du demanded that he get out of the Lonely Pearl within 3 minutes. The guy said that he didn't want to leave this wonderful place, and he couldn't kick him out so easily, after which he turned to his table, where his friends were sitting, and began to smile. His drinking buddies also laughed, saying that he sent him rolling on the ground with one blow. The guy ran up to the table and accused his friends of inaction, because they didn't even help him. They, in turn, continued to laugh, declaring that he himself was bragging about how well he could drink. The guy began to make excuses, saying that now he is not in the best shape, because he could not sleep properly for several days. One of them asked whether he would continue drinking with them, or would he still go to bed. The guy returned to the table again and suddenly grabbed a bottle of wine, stating that he initially wants to deal with his offenders. Approaching Hao, the young guy said that he was in a good mood today and asked him to drink the bottle in one gulp. And if Du does this, then he will have no claims against him. The guy handed him a bottle of wine, while Hao and his guards began to laugh at him. Du Hao then slapped his hand away and said that they only had 2 minutes left to leave this place. The guy smiled and began to juggle the bottle, when suddenly he tried to hit Du with this bottle. But the bodyguard managed to drink the bottle from his hand in a timely manner. As a result, a fierce fight broke out between them. The guy literally started beating all of Hao's guards, leaving them no chance. At the same time, he quite deftly dodged their strong blows, without giving them the opportunity to catch their breath. The guy really wasn't as simple as he initially seemed. His friends began to bet on the time it would take for him to beat Du's bodyguards. The gray-haired man said that the hedgehog would deal with them in 1 minute. And in the end he turned out to be right, as the hedgehog scattered them around. In just 59 seconds, which one of them counted down. Meanwhile, the hedgehog headed towards the frightened and already defenseless Du Hao. Du said that the consequences of beating people in Lone Pearl are irreversible. The hedgehog asked what consequences he was talking about, and after a couple of seconds, this room was filled with unknown people with bats and knives. They surrounded them, and the gray-haired man began to look at the large number of armed people. Then he ordered the hedgehog to stop, and as a result, let Du go. What the well-warmed-up hedgehog really didn't want, but he still didn't finish off Hao. Having said that he was incredibly lucky today, but next time he will not spare him. Du straightened his tie and approached the gray-haired man, declaring that he was the only sane person. And in this regard, he will give them 1 more minute so that they immediately leave the confines of the Lonely Pearl. At this moment, the unknown person could not stand it and grabbed Hao by the throat. The man pressed his fingers on Du's neck more and more, and said that the game would not go according to his rules. Armed guards tried to prevent arbitrariness. However, an unknown person stopped them, saying that he was not going to kill Hao. But the person who was hit by Du is actually a senior lieutenant, who serves in the special forces of the Beijing military district, and provided Hedgehog's documents. The man asked Du if he knew the consequences of attacking a military officer. Hao stated that he did not know that this guy was actually a soldier. The man said that if Hedgehog wants, he can even sue him for assault and personal insult to a military officer. Then he released Du, who immediately began to apologize to them, saying that today the banquet was at his expense. The gray-haired man noticed that in this way they could not help but pay for dinner, after which he called Hao with him, and they headed to Xiao and Lan's table. Manager Xian saw them from afar and became nervous, realizing that they would not be allowed to eat in peace. She very kindly asked the men not to spoil their appetite and not interfere with dinner. The man stopped in place and looked at the charming lady. Then he asked Zheng if it was really his daughter-in-law who was so beautiful. Du Hao was shocked by what he heard and could not contain his emotions. Unlike Miss Lan Xian, who was also taken aback, but did not show it. But I just asked the main character if they knew each other. Xiao replied that this was his senior comrade from the army. An acquaintance from the army asked Zheng if the disrespectful Du Hao had offended him. Zheng sadly said that he rather did not offend, but stated the facts. The man sighed heavily and once again looked around at everyone present, after which Hao ordered to immediately ask Xiao for forgiveness. Du decided to pretend that he had not heard him and politely asked again. The man said that he would not repeat it a third time, and urged him to apologize to Zhen. Hao couldn't understand why he had to ask some guard for forgiveness. And who is this gray-haired man to tell him what to do? Senior comrade Xiao could not stand it, and literally brought Du to his knees in front of everyone. Hao was furious, but could not do anything in this situation. Kneeling in front of a huge number of people, he hid his eyes. Xian Lan did not welcome this kind of proceedings, especially in a restaurant. The main character seemed to be completely indifferent to what was happening, and he didn't pay any attention to Du kneeling in front of him. Senior comrade Xiao stated that if Hao wants to defend his position, he can come to the garrison at any time, where he holds a post at the headquarters and resolve this issue with him, introducing himself as Lu Jun. Du never deigned to ask for forgiveness from Zheng, but rather threatened him. At that moment, Hedgehog sat down next to them and asked Jun to introduce the guy to him. Lu looked at him as if he was remembering how Xiao served in the army. Then he proudly said that Xiao Zheng was his colleague. In addition, he is the Iron King, whom Hedgehog always dreamed of challenging. The Hedgehog, in turn, changed his face and instantly approached Zheng, inquiring whether he really was the Iron King who crippled Shen Lang at the military district competition. Xiao said that heroes don't talk about their exploits. Hedgehog said that no one has ever broken his records, and the commanders remember him with respect. Jun noticed that Hedgehog had always looked up to Xiao, and he had recently won the military district championship in martial arts. Zheng stated that he has great potential, and the army needs elite fighters like him. The Hedgehog could not resist and invited the main character to compete with him. Zheng began to deny it, saying that he had been discharged from the army for 5 years already, and he wouldn't be able to defeat him, but the hedgehog didn't believe him, and said that the best way to find out was a duel. Xiao noted that he thought too highly of him. Lu also added that Hedgehog joined the army when he heard about his exploits, and he always considered Zheng his idol, punishing those who spoke badly about him. After some time, Xiao Zheng finally agreed to train with the hedgehog, but on one condition: do not go too far in your attacks. The hedgehog naturally agreed and asked Xiao to show him the highest class of martial arts, after which they stood opposite each other. Everyone was looking forward to a good fight. June urged the hedgehog to be careful, because Xiao was always famous for his merciless blows. The hedgehog declared that he had everything under control and warned Zheng about the attack. The main character smiled sarcastically and hurried him to attack. The hedgehog quickly attacked Zheng with a series of blows, who easily dodged them, at the same time, without striking back, as if he was playing with a kitten. However, having missed once again, the hedgehog tested Xiao Zheng's strength, because Xiao hit him in the chin with his ankle, which was extremely unpleasant. The hedgehog realized that he did not hit with his fist on purpose, so as not to injure him, and he understood how much Xiao Zheng was truly stronger and faster than him. The hedgehog saw Xiao swing his leg in his direction and applied a block to the head area, but the blow never came. Zheng easily kept his leg suspended, after which he stated that Hedgehog lost in this fight. He himself understood this very well. This is what Xiao said, saying that he will always remain an idol for him. Zheng rather modestly replied that Hedgehog flatters him excessively. At this moment, June approached him and asked why Xiao didn't call him earlier. Zheng replied that he wanted to find him and remember the past, but only when he found a stable job did Lu note his gentleness. After all, before he would not have restrained himself, Xiao said, before he was young, but now he understands that he cannot constantly cause disturbances. Then they agreed to meet, and Zheng went to Lan, who had been waiting for him. When leaving, Lu Jun asked Xiao to communicate with him more and not to forget the old man. It seemed that Zheng was not very happy about the sudden meeting. Lan began to say that she was sorry, and she only wanted to have dinner. And here it's such a mess. Xiao replied that everything is fine, and usually he doesn't have the opportunity to eat well, so he's grateful to her. After which, they decided to go for a walk in the fresh air. Suddenly, Lan Xian stopped in her tracks and said that she wanted to ask him something. They walked along the pier. Behind them stood the same Ferrari. How? At this moment, the main character distantly heard the sound of an engine. Turning around, Zheng saw Du riding towards them. Xiao grabbed Lan and jumped with her to the side, thus saving her. Hao was upset, because he never managed to get rid of Zheng. Xiao helped Xian get up and looked at Du's car so that if something happened, he would be ready. He asked Lan if she was okay. The girl replied that not everything was fine. Xian suddenly remembered her school days when Zheng protected her from pestering students. Lan extended her hand to Xiao, looking at him with loving eyes, and she said sadly that she wanted to tell him an important thing. Xian literally cried and stroked Zheng with gentle touches. In response, Xiao took her hand and looked into her eyes and asked, "Does anything hurt her?" suggesting how painfully she might have landed. Sad Xian withdrew her gaze and was silent for a while, after which, she still said that her heart hurt very much. Xiao thought it was better to call an ambulance, but Lan again grabbed Zheng's hands, and she said that she likes him. All these 8 years she has been thinking only about him. Then she burst into tears even more, saying that she had been waiting for him to return all this time. The main character was shocked by what he heard and did not know what to answer. Xiao wanted to say that he couldn't match her because he had no status. However, Xian stated that no matter who he became, for her he will always remain that courageous man. Zheng looked pitifully into her eyes, and could not believe that she had been waiting for him for 8 whole years. The Dou, in turn, thought that he was not ready to accept her and would refuse her. Xian understood that after this they couldn't even be friends, because she confessed to him too early and started crying even harder. Zheng tried to calm her down, saying that everything was fine and she shouldn't react like that. However, as everyone knows, women can never be stopped in anything. The main character began to think and realized that most likely she was crying because she thought that he would not accept her. Although Xiao didn't understand women well, he still tried to cheer her up, having said that she is crying for no reason, because he accepts her proposal. Manager Lan immediately stopped crying and stared at him with a surprised look. Zheng said that he was the boss of the first high school, and many girls liked him. And considering that she likes him very much, Xiao reluctantly agrees. The next second, he hated himself for such exorbitant arrogance, because how to meet someone who will appreciate you? It really costs a lot, and he behaves inappropriately. Xian couldn't believe her luck, because she had been waiting for this moment for 8 years. Covering herself with her hands and looking at her beloved, Lan again could not resist and began to cry, after which she ran after Zhen and hugged him tightly. Saying that she understood, he agreed only to calm her down, adding that all these 8 years she did not lose hope and did not drive away her feelings. Xiao thought about it. It turned out that in a world where no one ever cared about him, there was a person who missed him. At this moment, the main character suddenly laughed, and Lan was surprised. And she asked what happened. It was not convenient for Zheng to hug with his back to her, which is what he said. Xian pretended to be offended by him because his joke was inappropriate. Then they held hands and walked under the starry sky. It was very cute. They smiled at each other and looked at each other. Xiao noticed that she had a satisfied face. Lan called him her man. Zheng asked her not to advertise this news. Xian asked in surprise why. Xiao said that it was already not easy for him to find a job, and it was forbidden to have office romances in the company. The Dou replied that the rules in New Arcana only apply to regular employees. Xian, in turn, understood Zheng, and looked at him again, and she said that she agreed not to tell anyone about their relationship. After which, she reached out to Xiao and gently kissed her on the cheek, like a friend. After some time, they came to the parking lot. Zheng suggested that she return home, and he would take a taxi. Happy Xian agreed and decided to go home first. Xiao kindly asked her to call when she arrived home. Lan drove out of the parking lot. Zheng looked after her, and suddenly his phone rang. He saw that he had received a message from Shuyin. Xiao thought she missed him. However, Lin wrote that if Zheng did not return before midnight, he would spend the night in the park. The main character realized how truly ruthless she was. Naturally, Xiao hurried home, all sweaty. He ran into the house and announced that he had already returned. Shuyin, in turn, stated if he continues to live here, then he would have to return home until 11 in the evening, after which she took off her face mask, and she looked menacingly at Xiao, who began to say that in the future he would inform her if he was delayed. After which, he calmly lit a cigarette and leaned his elbows on the back of the sofa. The angry Lin jumped up and said that Zheng had become bolder and insolent. Then, she demanded that he get up from her sofa and reminded him that he was forbidden to touch anything except his room. Xiao began to ask her for forgiveness, saying that he was careless and forgot. Noticing how stern she was, Shuyin urged him not to become impudent. Lin sat back down on the sofa and asked why he didn't go to bed, because he had to work tomorrow. Zheng replied that she only needs 6 hours of sleep, and suggested that she was in a bad mood due to problems at work. Lin stated that this did not concern him. Xiao noted her indifference. Zheng said that she should be happy, because the sixth master repaid the debt with interest. Shuyin tensed and asked how he knew about this. The main character realized that he had fallen into another of her traps and sighed heavily. Then he said that he and Tang accompanied manager Lan on a trip to collect the debt, and she even invited him to dinner. Shuyin was extremely surprised by this fact, and got up from the sofa and approached Xiao. After which, literally looking into his eyes, she asked if he was telling the truth. Zheng replied that this was true, and she should reward manager Lan for her efforts, since with her help Wang returned the money. Lin looked at him with a stern look and asked if Xian could be offered the position of president of the company. Xiao realized that it was better to end this conversation as soon as possible. Having said that he will go to bed and will no longer disturb her from watching TV. Suddenly Shuyin stopped him. Zheng turned to her smiling. Lin asked him why he did not return with Ming and Lan, and what he had been doing for these 2 hours. Xiao understood that Wang Lu could not tell her about the incident, but Lin might have learned something. Shuyin also realized that if the debt had been so easy to get out of Wang, Lan would have told her about it right away. This means that the sixth master did not want to return the money, and someone forced him. It could have been Tang. But it is quite possible that Zheng was also involved in this, because he remained a man of mystery. Xiao pretended that she didn't ask anything serious and answered her with a smile on his face. An ex-girlfriend allegedly called him and asked him to help with some bandits who were harassing her. Shuyin doubted this and asked if he really had an ex-girlfriend. Xiao began to say that there was no point in her being jealous of him, especially if she was pursuing him. Lin seemed to go crazy and grabbed Zheng by the t-shirt, but could not stay on her feet. Xiao Zheng never expected such a violent reaction from Shuyin. As a result, they fell to the floor with a roar. Lin only managed to grab his shirt. Lying on the floor, they met each other's eyes and suddenly began to get up. Zheng said that she was after him to sign the marriage contract. Lin began shouting that he should never tell anyone about this event. Shuyin noticed that Xiao was too careless in his actions and had no courage in him. But despite all this, he remained an unsolved mystery for her. Whatever Lin was able to find out about him was not that interesting. Zheng was an orphan and was once a prominent figure at Mingzhu First High School. But in his third year, he suddenly dropped out of school and joined the army, from where he was expelled for gross negligence. And after that he worked carrying bricks at a construction site, then got into a fight and got involved with bad company, after which he abruptly disappeared and returned back to Mingzhu for 6 months. Lin Shuyin was sure that sooner or later she would find out who he really was. Xiao pretended to gape, hinting that he was already very tired and wanted to sleep. Zheng said that if she has no more questions, then he will go to bed. But the irrepressible Shuyin stopped him again. Xiao had already begun to bother Lin. He turned around and with a dissatisfied face asked what else she wanted. Shuyin asked him to fix the water heater because there was no hot water in her room. But the service center said that it was too late and the repairman would only be able to arrive tomorrow. Zheng said that he was an expert in water and electricity and went to look at the water heater. After a while, Xiao fiddled with the water heater to no avail. Lin, in turn, began to interfere with him, depending on what he was doing. The main character asked her to move away because she was interfering with his work. Shuyin replied that she was only controlling him, because she did not know whether he was fixing or breaking. Lin moved a few meters away from him, and after a couple of minutes, Xiao declared that he had done everything. Lin immediately ran upstairs to check the quality of his work. Zheng noticed that she was quite cute and walked into the living room. Shuyin shouted that everything was working, and he could safely go to bed. But she didn't even thank him. Apparently people like her. They are used to treating people as free labor. Xiao fell onto her sofa and noticed that it was quite comfortable. Moreover, there was a very large TV opposite, which was nice to see. Zheng caught himself thinking that the house had become suspiciously quiet. Assuming that Shuyin went to the bathroom, it was time for a late-night snack. The main character immediately went to the kitchen, where he began to actively look for food. Zheng decided to warm up his late dinner a little and lit the stove. Then he literally filled the table with various goodies, thinking that the dinner was definitely a success. Xiao began to greedily stuff himself with food and admire its incredible taste. Not even half a minute had passed before another surprise interrupted his late-night snack. Suddenly, Zheng heard the lock turn on the front door, after which, an unknown girl who looked like Shuyin entered the apartment. She shouted loudly to the whole house that she had finally returned home. Initially, Xiao even thought that it was Lin, who was upstairs, but for some reason came through the front door. The girl went into the kitchen and asked what smelled so good. Seeing a man unknown to her at the table, she didn't even turn an ear. And she acted as if no one was there and nothing happened. Zheng was shocked. The girl calmly took off her backpack and put it on the floor, then grabbed her chopsticks. And she began to casually stuff herself with noodles, saying that it was very tasty. Stunned by what was happening, Xiao silently looked at her with surprised eyes. He understood one thing: this girl really looked like Shuyin, but her character was completely different. After which, the girl freely moved his portion of noodles and began to eat. Zheng could not stand such impudent behavior and asked who she was. The girl smiled back at him and assumed that he was her son-in-law. Xiao regained his sight, realizing that it was Shuyin's younger sister. The girl, in turn, said that her older sister nevertheless brought a man into the house. Noticing that he is quite attractive, but for her sister this is not the main thing, which means he is gifted in something else. Zheng was at a loss and did not understand how this girl could talk about such things so freely. She leaned towards Xiao and asked in a whisper if he was in love with her sister. Zheng asked if she was really Shuyin's sister. The girl replied that she was not her own, but Lin's half-sister, adding that in her opinion, his sister most likely offered him a fictitious marriage. In order to hide his terrible secret from everyone, Xiao was amazed by her frankness, and he asked if she was afraid that her sister might hear all this. In response, the girl laughed, saying that he apparently didn't know very well who Lin Xiaomen was, stating that she is the hero of Mingzhu, and cannot possibly be afraid of her sister. At this time, Shuyin came over and stated that her little sister had received 5 notices of expulsion from school, and she missed more classes than she took phone calls from her parents. In addition, she also burned down the dormitory, and constantly fought with everyone, but at the same time, she still does not miss the opportunity to show off. The girl saw her older sister and literally went crazy, pouncing on her with a hug and saying that she still cares about her. Xiao noticed that for such a despotic and business-like woman as Shuyin, such an extravagant little sister is a headache. Lin said that today was only Thursday and she was not at school, and asked why she showed up in the middle of the night. Xiaomen replied that she could not miss the chance to see her son-in-law. The spoiled girl pestered her with questions about whether she told her parents about this guy and how they met. Lin understood that she couldn't tell her family about Zheng's existence, and stated that Xiao was just an employee of the company. Men replied that when she comes to visit her for a couple of days, Lin complains that it takes a long time, but then she called the employee home. Shuyin stated that men's visits to her home usually result in the theft of money or things, even if they were not sisters. She would have handed her over to the police long ago. In response, the girl staged a one-man show, complaining to Xiao about her sister. Zheng decided to stand up for Xiaomen, saying that Shuyin was going too far, because she was her sister. Lin shouted menacingly that it was none of his business exactly how she raised her younger sister. Zheng also decided to give a lecture about morality to men, saying that she should not steal, especially from her own sister. In response, Xiaomen laughed in his face, then suddenly began to cry. Again playing to the public, she declared that no one needed her and no one loved her. Shuyin asked men what kind of trouble she got into this time, but her younger sister assured her that she simply missed her very much, and she even prepared a gift for her sister, after which she ran to her backpack. Then she took out a small box from it and returned to Shuyin, which, in turn, seemed already tired of her spoiled sister. Meng said she purchased a limited edition face mask and waited in line for 3 hours. However, Lin said that she can buy a mask at any time, but why she skips school is a question. Men looked offended and said in a sad voice that starting tomorrow she couldn't buy such a mask anywhere. Shuyin still gave in and said that this time they would forget about it, but men must go to school tomorrow morning. Xiaomen again rushed to hug and kiss her little sister. Naturally, everyone understood that the cunning little man was just fooling around, but she was a child. Lin said that she would go to bed, and reminded Xiaomen about tomorrow, where she had to go back to school. Little sister kindly wished good night to Shuyin, realizing that the time has come for the devilishly indecent Xiaomen. She jumped onto the sofa and shouted enthusiastically that she had succeeded. At this time, Zheng said that he was also going to bed, and she could continue to have fun. But the girl did not want to let him go so easily, and asked him to accompany her. Xiao drank a glass of water and said that her sister would not forgive him if he was late for work. Men said that if he leaves, then tomorrow her father will come and tear him into pieces. Zheng rinsed her with water from a glass and asked if her father was really such a cruel person. Wiping herself with a rag, Men replied that he was much tougher than her older sister. The main character thought about it, realizing that this cunning woman is also a manipulator. He asked if she was afraid that Shuyin would find out and then she would be torn to pieces. The impudent men asked in response whether Xiao had really become close to her sister. Zheng asked if, with his appearance, he was not good enough for Shuyin. The self-confident men leaned back on the sofa and replied that Xiao looks good, but people like him are called gigolos. Zheng warned her that if she got personal again, he would go to bed. Xiaomen said, considering that he tried to protect her in front of her sister, she won't pester him anymore. And at the same moment, she asked him to lend her money for small expenses. It turns out that in order for them to get along, Xiao had to pay. Zheng decided to give her 200 yuan, telling her to spend this money wisely. Men was horrified, and she asked why he was mocking her. Then Xiao demanded the money back. Naturally, the cunning Xiaomen did not return the money, saying that she needed about 100,000 a month. The main character was dumbfounded by such a figure and stated that he did not have that kind of money, adding that he is ready to take on some minor expenses, but to the same extent. Men said that of course he doesn't have that kind of money, but her sister does. Xiao said that in this case she should find her sister and ask her for money, and he went to bed. but the restless Xiaomen stopped him again. Miss Arrogance knew no bounds. Zheng no longer knew how to get rid of her. Men quietly said that in the drawer of her sister's dressing table, there was a diamond necklace. Zhao's face changed, declaring that under no circumstances would he steal it. In response, the shameless girl smiled. Zheng repeated once again that he would not do this. Men covered his mouth with her hand, saying that her sister was a light sleeper, and offered him 30%. Xiao understood that he clearly shouldn't play such games, since it wouldn't lead to anything good. He tried to dissuade the young lady from this idea, because he could lose his job, and maybe his life. After which he hurried to go to his room, but men once again did not allow him to do this, stating that he is a grown man, but for some reason he is such a coward. Zheng replied that this was not a matter of cowardice but of principle, and advised her to forget about it, saying that spending so much at such a young age is extremely wrong. Xiaomen then shouted that this was not for her money, but to save people's lives. Xiao doubted the veracity of her words and began to question her in more detail. Men started crying and saying that this was a very long story and she needed help. Zheng said that he would not help her until she told her why she needed the money. Xiaomen wiped her tears and said that she needed 500,000. Xiao assured her that if it was really necessary to save someone's life, then he would get 1,000,000. Then men said that that evening they had a conflict with visitors to the bar, and one of her classmates hit him with a bottle, as a result of which he smashed his head. Zheng assumed that they were demanding money for medical expenses, but the younger sister said that this is just extortion, and the treatment costs only a few thousand, and they are asking for 500. Xiao said that her parents give her 100,000 a month. Where does she spend that kind of money? Men replied that she has many friends, and regular snacks cost her several thousand yuan. Zheng understood perfectly well that she was a spender and asked if her classmates were being held hostage. The girl said tearfully, everyone except her was with the bandits, and they said that if they did not pay them money, they would cut off the hand of one of them. The main character asked why she didn't report to the police. Xiaomen thought about it, as if she was thinking up her own fictional story. Then she answered that these were unusual visitors, and a group consisting of gangsters. Zheng noticed, knowing that bandits are not to be trifled with, they still decided to provoke the underworld. Men said that she did not want to see her classmates being maimed. Xiao assured her otherwise, because they need money and not the lives of children. After which, Zheng asked him to be taken to the place where they were being held hostage. Arriving at the bar indicated by Xiaomen, they stopped at its entrance. Xiao asked where exactly they were keeping her classmates. Men replied that there was a separate room on the second floor. Zheng asked if the bar owner really didn't care. Xiaomen assured him that he himself was afraid of these gangsters. The main character sat down at the bar and ordered himself some tequila. The younger sister was outraged, saying that he came to get her friends out, and not to drink, and asked him to take this matter more seriously. Xiao asked the spoiled child if she had ever heard the saying, "Know your enemy as you know yourself, and then you will emerge victorious in many situations." Men said that their enemy is on the second floor, and sitting here he won't learn anything. Zheng asked if she was a frequent guest at this establishment. Xiaomen replied that she had been here several times. Then he asked if she was on good terms with the bar owner. Men said that he even helped her a couple of times, acting as an intermediary. Xiao noticed that she spends a lot of money every time, so the owner treats her well, but now he doesn't want to help. Questioning why he suddenly refused to help, Xiaomen began to say something indistinctly. After all, the person who became the owner of such an establishment will not be afraid of bandits and watch how his business is interfered with. Men asked if Zheng really thought the bar owner was a bad person. Xiao suggested that he may well be on the side of the extortionists. Because she made his cash register and partially helped his business, Zheng slowly poured the tequila onto the bar counter. And the owner realized that he could extract money from it, and therefore could not resist this opportunity. Puzzled, little sister Lin asked what they should do in this case. Zheng confidently stated that she should just watch him deal with everything alone. At this moment, the bar owner approached them and called out to Xiaomen. He immediately asked if she had brought the money, since people were tired of waiting. Self-confident and overly hot-tempered, men said that she brought her friend. The bar owner asked his name. Xiao urged him not to stand on ceremony and quickly save those teenagers. The owner politely asked them to follow him up the stairs to the top. Having risen, Zheng began to carefully look around. The main character, as always, looked more than confident, while men began to get nervous. She took out her phone, and the bar owner immediately asked her not to do anything stupid, because the bandits could hurt her friends. Xiao Men couldn't hold back her emotions and said that they were a group of thugs. Zheng urged her to be calm and not to provoke them, since they had hostages. The owner of the establishment naively believed that when he received his share, he would definitely teach the guy a lesson. Leading them to the door, he said that they were waiting inside that room. Cool Zheng said that he would be happy to meet them. Then he opened the door, and he and the frightened Xiao Men went inside. A rather bright light spilled from the room, which was literally blinding. Xiao Men noticed that this room was too bright. The gang leader was sitting in the middle of the room, and around him were tied up tortured teenagers. Xiao Men could not hold back her tears, because she had only seen this in films. Men's tearful classmates were tied to the radiator, and the leader laughed in their faces. This picture evoked disgusting feelings in her, while Xiao was unperturbed. Xiao Men couldn't help herself and said that they had no right to beat her friends. The thug only smiled in response, after which he replied that he was tired of waiting, and if she had brought the money before midnight, then everything would be fine, but now, he stated that he wanted to receive $1 million for saving the lives of her friends. Then he ordered his guards to show his intentions and the seriousness of the moment. The bodyguards dragged the beaten guys by the hair and forced them to their knees. Then they put knives to their throats. The teenagers thought this was the end. The leader of the thugs said that what would happen next would be a deplorable picture. Xiao Men shouted that she would give him the money, asking him to let her classmates go. The bandit replied that this point could of course be discussed. Only if they have money, namely $1 million yuan. Men urged Zheng to give them the money, but the problem was that there was none. What Xiao hurried to tell her about, Xiao Men was shocked, thinking that this would all end. However, Xiao Zheng said that he knew where he could borrow that kind of money. The younger sister literally began to beg him to borrow this money, saying that she would return everything to him later. Xiao said, he can now borrow the necessary amount, but where is the guarantee that they will be allowed to get out of here alive? The gangster leader replied that the most important thing in their business is trust. Zheng said that a second ago it was $500,000, and now it's $1 million, which is why he doesn't trust him. The bandit asked what proposals he would have in this regard. Xiao demanded that Men's classmates be released, and in return he would give him a card with 500,000 on it and tell him the PIN code. The leader of the group assured that he would free them after he gave him the map, and he asked Xiao and Miss Lin to stay in the room until they withdraw the money. Zheng noted that this was quite reasonable and prudent on his part, after which, the main character threw him his bank card. The stupid gang leader ordered his big men to let the teenagers go. The bodyguards actually released Xiaomen's classmates. Then they began, very slowly, to untie the teenagers' hands. A few seconds later, Xiaomen's exhausted friends were free, and they hurried to leave this location. Zheng and Men looked after them, to make sure that no one really interferes with them. The short-sighted bandit said that he let them go, which means he fulfilled his part of the deal. And he asked Zheng what the PIN code for the bank card was. Xiao replied, 6 units. He ordered his man to go to the bank and withdraw all the money and take his bag with him, since 500,000 is not a small amount. At this moment, the owner of the bar realized everything and hastened to intervene. He sharply snatched the card. And he said that he was an idiot, because the ATM limit is up to 20,000, and banks don't work at night. The dull gangster asked what they should do in this case. The owner of the establishment said that if he decided to deceive him, then he would not survive this night. The bandit immediately ordered his big men to call and check if there was money on this card. Meanwhile, the main character burst into laughter and called him stupid, because he never understood how absurdly he had been fooled. In response, the enraged gang leader said that he would kill Zheng. The bar owner called on the security guards to deal with Xiao immediately since he couldn't pay with money. The bandits immediately headed towards Xiao Zheng. Drawing their swords, they tried to kill him, but never hit him, while the main character dealt with them pretty quickly. From one of the bodyguards, he snatched the blade from his hands and began to wield it quite skillfully. The guards, in turn, could not understand who this guy was. At this moment, classmate Xiao Men decided to join them. Xian Chen urged her to stay where she was and not to interfere in any way. Men asked what he was going to do. Xian took the bottle from the table and rushed into the fight. Zheng noticed that the young man moves quite well, and he definitely has potential. The bandits realized that they could not cope with Xiao, and their leader began to act. Suddenly, he grabbed Xiaomen and held a knife to her throat, ordering Zheng not to move, adding that otherwise this girl will die, and her death will be on his conscience. Xian Chen shouted at them to leave her alone. The owner of the establishment said, since they love to fight so much, it wouldn't hurt to let men feel the blood too. Chen suddenly tried to attack the bandits, but one of them stopped him. With a sharp blow to the legs, he literally knocked the teenager to the floor. The bar owner said that now Zheng could not do anything to them, and he would not let the girl go, which was very wrong. Xiaomen began to scream in fear. Xiao slowly picked up the knife from the floor and directed his menacing gaze at the fat owner, who asked what Xiao was planning to do this time. Zheng said confidently that he would force him to let the little girl go, after which, with a sharp movement of his hand, Xiao threw the knife straight at the leader. And then he completely killed the rest of the thugs, with just one blade, from which blood was dripping. Everything happened very quickly. The fat hog didn't have time to do anything. How the whole room was filled with blood, and he found himself in a rather lamentable position. He began to literally beg Zheng for mercy, but it seemed Xiao could no longer be stopped. The old hog kept telling Zheng not to come near him. Even Xiaomen tried to stop him, which Xiao found in the room, and he hurriedly handed over the blade to her so that she could solve this problem herself, urging her in every possible way to take revenge on him for herself and her classmates. Men was horrified and refused to do this, saying that he could not and did not want to participate in this. However, the main character insisted on ridding society of such scum as the bar owner. Zheng took her hand and placed the sword in it, and began to help her hold the blade. The owner of the establishment said that this was a misunderstanding, and he could explain everything to them. But it was already too late. Xiao raised the sword above his head and helped men throw it at the bandit. Thus, the blade stuck into the wall, a millimeter from the scoundrel's ear. Xiaomen breathed a sigh of relief, because she really thought that Xiao would do this. Zheng, in turn, warned the owner of the establishment that if this happens again, he will burn down his bar. After which, they went outside and Xiao caught a taxi so that men's classmates could get home. Xian noted his incredible strength and asked to follow him, then got into a taxi. Zheng lit a cigarette and replied that he had better get this thought out of his head. After all, he is a humble security guard, and by following him, Chen will lose a normal future. Xian clarified whether he was really a guard. Xiao began to laugh it off, saying that he was definitely not a brother from the underworld, adding that the student is obliged to study well and not skip school, and not try to connect his life with the criminal world. Xiaomen wondered why Zheng did not allow Sun to follow him. Xiao replied that there was no point in this and lightly tapped her head. Having said that her head was apparently completely empty, Men was not offended by him, but even on the contrary. She suggested that those who did poorly at school fight well. Zheng said that he was always in the top 3 students. Therefore, her theory is false. Men asked him why then he follows her sister, since he is so smart. Xiao asked her not to tell her older sister about this incident. The next day at work, Shuyin suddenly decided to go to Zheng's office. Lin said that she had an important meeting in the morning, and therefore he needed to take men to school, which she warned by about. After which she turned around busily and calmly left the room. Xiao noted her tactlessness. The next morning, Shuyin and Xiaomen silently ate breakfast in the kitchen. At this moment, Zheng walked down the stairs and decided to join them. Men noticed that he still deigned to change clothes, in some century. Xiao said that this made him look more attractive. Xiaomen urged him not to be so narcissistic. After which she abruptly pulled him out so that he would take her to school. Zheng stated that he had not even had breakfast. And only the thoughtful Lin did not understand at what moment they managed to become such friends. After a certain amount of time, Xiao drove men to school. She, as always, called him son-in-law and asked if he knew what kind of area this was. The main character, without hesitation, answered that this is the Yunfeng Road. Xiaomen asked if he knew that the most interesting things were happening on this road. Zheng already realized that she was up to something again and replied, "They just need to get to school." Men said that today is the annual competition, and the winner will receive 500,000 yuan. Meanwhile, a sports car suddenly overtook them, and Men was scared, saying that driving such a car is a pleasure, and if she had such a car, Xiao would never catch up with her. Zheng said that he still needed to get to work, but Xiaomen began to show a wild desire to get to the racing competition. Xiao replied that admission to this event costs 5,000 yuan per person. Men took out a wad of money. and she said that her sister gave her money for small expenses, but Zheng still resisted. After all, he promised her sister that he would take her to school, and asked her not to fool him. Meng said that after they get to the competition, she will gather her thoughts and become a good student. The main character asked her if she was telling the truth now, realizing that this girl was quite cunning. Xiaomen swore to him and said that she would not deceive him anymore. At this moment, Zheng finally gave up and turned the car around. Men screamed joyfully. A few minutes later, they successfully arrived in Japanshan, where competitive races were held, which Xiaomen began to tirelessly repeat. A large number of spectators gathered in Japanshan to watch the sports races. Suddenly, a competition employee knocked on their window and asked if they had a ticket. Xiaomen handed him a wad of money and asked him not to knock on her car. After which he asked which round they were going to participate in. There were 5 in total. Men thought about it, realizing that the car that overtook them was clearly going to the competition, but she wanted speed and an unforgettable experience. Xiaomen said that she wanted to participate in the C-class. In response, the employee laughed and once again asked her if she was sure of her choice. Little Men said that he gave him the money and he shouldn't care where or with whom she competes. Zheng decided to play along with her, saying that this car was modified. An employee of this event said that in this case they can take part and go to the C-zone. Where they went, Men asked Xiao why he didn't tell her earlier that this car was modified. Zheng replied because he made it up, and they quickly need to find a parking space so as not to participate in the race. Xiaomen confidently told him that she was not afraid to take part in the competition. Xiao said that all the drivers are experts in racing and their cars are clearly modified, and they cannot overtake them with a BMW. Men said that she had already signed up for the competition, and now she couldn't give up so easily. Zheng looked pitifully at the naive girl and asked if she was sure of her decision. Xiaomen asked to let her drive the car, saying that she would not be far behind the leaders of the race. Xiao Zheng asked her to look ahead, where the team of professional racers was. The main character said that there are drivers there who take part in international competitions, and she cannot defeat them. Meng was surprised, saying that this is just an amateur championship, and they should not take part in the race. Xiao tried to explain to her that the ticket costs 5,000 and the reward is 500,000, and the organizer will not give the opportunity to ordinary people. Xiaomen finally understood what was going on and said that this was also a criminal world and a money pit. Men asked how Zheng could know about all this, unless he is a former racer. Xiao replied that he doesn't even have a car, and he has never participated in such races, but everyone relies on their own skills. In addition, the organizer controls victories and defeats in competitions and manipulates the ratings. Zheng got out of the car and lit a cigarette. Men followed him, saying that this is a disgusting system. Xiao said that the most disgusting thing is yet to come. This is illegal bookmaking, where one race generates hundreds of millions. In this way, the organizer not only receives a solid income, but also launders money. Men had no idea how complicated it all was. Therefore, Zheng suggested that she just watch a couple of races, because if she took part in the race, she would only embarrass herself. At this moment, an unknown girl called him, calling him handsome. Xiao and Men turned around, and they saw in front of them a charming girl in a red dress, driving that same sports car. Younger sister Lin said that she almost hit their car. The girl noticed that Zheng was quite well versed in this system and invited him to place a bet. In the Class A race, Xiao thought about who would take first place, saying that she would bet on a silver Bentley. Men grabbed his hand and said that he was her son-in-law, who would not play these childish games with her. The stranger noted that if he is her brother-in-law, then her sister might be jealous, because she is too close to him. Men replied that her sister was not greedy, but he didn't like people like her. The girl asked who she was. The same with elastic forms and beautiful. Xiaomen called her shameless. Zheng decided to defuse the situation and said that his sister-in-law had a bad character, and there was no point in picking on her. The offended men, in turn, really behaved like a child. The stranger noticed that she had a very good son-in-law, and her sister was apparently lucky, after which, she hurried to say goodbye to them, saying that they would see each other later. Zheng said that she just didn't start the conversation quite right, but that's no reason to be so angry and attack people. Men stated that she had seen people like her, and if measures were not taken, then she might even have plans for him. Xiao tried to calm her down, saying that the Class A race was already starting. The traffic light signaled the start of the competition, and the cars rushed forward. Spectators accompanied the racers with whistles and shouted words of support. The stadium announcer told the story of the origin of Japanshin, with 9 dangerous turns, and for the racers it is sacred ground. Xiaomen closely watched the race, and especially the BMW, which had taken the lead and was in the lead at the moment. However, just a few moments later, the Bentley driver began to catch up with the BMW. Main freaked out, saying that Bentley shouldn't win the competition, but in turn, it was she who entered the top 10, and gradually walked towards her goal. A little later, Bentley reduced the distance from the BMW as much as possible, and was literally breathing down our backs. The announcer informed the audience that there were about 500 meters left before the turn and the BMW was currently in the lead. People in the stands were just going crazy, supporting their car. Meanwhile, the silver Bentley was following the BMW, and the key moment would be the last corner, which will determine the winner of the competition. The Bentley driver pushed the BMW to the side of the road. Thus, the BMW lost speed, and Bentley overtook it on the turn. Xiaomen was furious, saying that Bentley had no right to crash into the BMW, and even if he wins, it will be a shame. Zheng noted that even at international competitions, clashes are allowed, but in an emergency situation. In the end, it was the Bentley driver who won the Class A race. Everyone began to say how young and handsome he was. The audience happily welcomed the new champion to the stage. Journalists and reporters flocked to cover the event, and only the dissatisfied Xiaomen was against such a victory, declaring that he won unfairly. Suddenly she noticed that her son-in-law had disappeared somewhere. Meanwhile Zheng seemed to meet a familiar face. Annoying men finally caught up with Xiao and asked where he was going. The main character said that it was none of her business and asked her to stay here, and he needs to go on business, after which he will return to her. Xiaomen didn't like this, but she had no other choice. At this time, in one of the grandstand rooms, the losing racer asked for forgiveness from a certain brother Dun. But unfortunately, he didn't get away with just an apology. Dong said that they lost a lot of money because of him. After which he beat him. The guy made excuses, saying that he did not know about the nitrogen equipment in his car. Dong still could not calm down, declaring that he was the god of Japanshin racing, but could not win without a nitrogen system. And if he really can't win, then they don't need him. Dong said that Boss Yi forced him to give him a job, otherwise he would have thrown him out even earlier. Dong noted that if Feng loses in the next race, he will destroy him. At this moment, Zheng decided to intervene and hastened to say that Dong would not lay a finger on anyone. Dune turned and, wiping the blood from his hands, asked what this had to do with him. Xiao proudly stated that Li Feng's affairs were his affairs too, and it was better for them to stay away from him. Dong began to escalate the situation, telling his friends that this tumor, as it turned out, had a friend. A few seconds later, Zheng literally brought him to his knees with a couple of blows. Men understood that Xiao was in danger. Dong ordered his wards to immediately beat this guy, and not stand there like a pillar. However, they did not dare after seeing his strength. Then Xiao slapped Dong, and he said that it was better for him not to twitch and not joke with him, after which he told him his name. His friends tried to threaten Zheng, but did not dare to attack him. Xiao asked Feng what happened to his leg. Li replied that it happened when he participated in an underground race 3 years ago and crashed. Zheng was interested in who exactly did this. Li said that it was some professional racer, but he did not know his name. He added that only steel pieces pierced his leg, while the other completely crashed the car and died. Li asked Xiao where he had been all this time. Zheng replied that he had to leave the country and had only recently returned. At that moment, Xiaomen ran up to him. She realized that they were old friends. Feng asked who it was. The main character said that it was his sister-in-law, and they came to watch the races. Li noticed that it was good to watch, but it was much more interesting to participate. Xiao Zheng agreed with him and began to actively knead the bones in his hands. Feng asked Xiao in surprise whether he would really decide to take part in the championship. Men was also at a loss, saying that she no longer counted on this. Zheng reminded her that she herself wanted to immerse herself in the atmosphere of the C-class competition. Meanwhile, the bandits helped their boss get up from his knees, asking how he was feeling. Another called to beat up the guy. Brother Dong shouted loudly for the two of them to finally shut up. Then he asked if any of them knew who this impudent guy was. Dune thought for a moment and could only remember that he had disappeared about 5 years ago. His henchmen said that he could be the ruthless man who has taken over the underworld. Together with their boss Yi, the other said as he heard that this Zheng was going to take part in the C-class race. Dong ordered to immediately seek the opinions of Boss Yi, which was done as a result. Boss Yi ordered them to act as usual and not touch Xiao under any circumstances. Dong asked again. That's all Boss Yi said. His humble servant answered positively. They began to think about whether to give complete freedom to Zheng, because if he influenced the rating, they would lose a lot of money. Men said that Xiao was definitely connected to the underworld, otherwise those hooligans would not be afraid of him, stating that she will not tell her sister about this, and this will be their second secret. The main character replied that she was much more intelligent than her sister, and in fact was not so stupid. At that moment, the same stranger approached them and noticed that Xiao was very close to his sister-in-law. Xiao Men hurried to tell her that her breath stank terribly and she needed to brush her teeth more often. The girl began to be insolent to men in every possible way, but Zheng interrupted their foul language, asking if she was still interested in betting, or if she was afraid. The stranger asked what they would bet on. Xiao replied, on winning the C-class race, and if he wins, she will shut her mouth. The girl said that if she wins, he will have dinner with her. Zheng smiled and said that now he would definitely not lose, which angered her. After some time, the riders prepared for the race in the C-class zone. Men said that he had no right to lose. Zheng asked her to fasten her seatbelt, and he urged her to hold on tight. Xiao Men noticed that she would never get used to his serious face. A couple of minutes later, the C-class competition race finally began. The racers started immediately. Xiao Men didn't expect it to be so fast and dangerous. From time to time she screamed like crazy. Zheng, in turn, just smiled. And he was focused only on the track, and was soon able to lead the race. What irritated Dong and his detractors excessively was that he said that a BMW couldn't go that fast. His henchmen assured that everything was under control, and they sent 3 professional racers. And once they reached the sharp turns, Zheng will definitely be finished. Dong ordered them to do their best to achieve this. Meanwhile Xiao continued to lead the race. However, an impudent stranger gradually approached him in her red Ferrari. Soon, extremely dangerous turns began. The girl understood why Zheng behaved so arrogantly, because his skills were good. The announcer started up the stadium, talking about the last turn, after which the winner of the competition would be determined. After all, only the 2 of them were left ahead. Men began to get nervous and say that she was catching up. The main character replied that he already saw everything and called on her to sit still. Zheng, with deft maneuvers, tried to throw the arrogant girl off his tail. It's worth admitting that he did a pretty good job. Suddenly their cars collided. She wanted to overtake him at the finish line by any means possible, but she never managed to take first place. Unlike Xiao Zheng, who ultimately won the race, men jumped with happiness. Finally, Xiao was awarded a cash prize of 500,000 yuan. The girl was furious, realizing that she still lost to the arrogant guy. While Xiaomen and Zheng became rich by 500,000, a mysterious stranger approached the main character and noted his rather good driving skills. While men made faces at her, Xiao confidently said that there were many things awaiting her in the world that she would not know about. The A-class winner came to the loser's defense, but she immediately reined him in, ordering him not to interfere. She herself hurried to introduce herself, calling herself Shen Manjun, and asked what Zheng's name was, and extended her hand to him. Xiao remembered that there was another beautiful woman in the Empire State Building besides Shuyin, and it was she. Shen noticed that it was not gentlemanly to make a lady wait so long. After all, she extended her hand to him and he thought. Zheng asked her forgiveness and told her his name. After which, Manjun said goodbye to the main character, saying that they would definitely meet again. She smiled sweetly at Xiao, blowing him a kiss and winking. What finally knocked out Xiaomen, who wanted Zheng to stop communicating with her. And he wasn't so kind to anyone. Xiao calmed her down and said that he would take her to school. Arriving at the educational institution, Zheng went out into the schoolyard and looked at the joyful students. As if he was remembering his childhood, he was suddenly called out by a male voice unknown to him. Xiao turned around. The guy with glasses said that Boss Yi wanted to see him. Zheng assumed that it was Yi Shiguan, and they drove to his penthouse, where Shiguan greeted him quite cordially and warmly, in the company of a dozen of his bodyguards. Yi began to hug him and say how much he had changed over these 5 years, matured and prettier, putting his hand on his shoulder. Xiao removed his hand from his shoulder and said that only he had truly changed. Yi did not understand what he was talking about. Zheng said that he used to be Ye's brother, but now he has grown to be Ye's boss, and now he lives in a mansion with an entire army of guards. And most importantly, he became a respectable man. Shiguan laughed and noticed that Xiao had become more eloquent. Then he invited him to go inside his huge house and properly celebrate their meeting. Saying that He Xiong would come later, they met Li Feng's brother at the house, who jumped up from his seat at the sight of them. Shiguan urged him to sit calmly in a chair and feel at home. Yi raised Maotai's glass and said that they hadn't gotten together for more than 5 years, so they should celebrate it well today. Feng offered to drink to Shiguan and his generous heart. However, Zheng did not drink and instead decided to light a cigarette. He did not understand why this was so, and hurried to find out what was the matter. After asking Xiao what happened, if he doesn't like Maotai, he will order another alcoholic drink to be served. Zheng said that he wanted to clarify one point, especially since there are no outsiders now, and he asked Shiguan if he considered Feng his sworn brother. He responded positively, saying that without his help he would not be in his place. Xiao asked why. In this case, Yi lives in a mansion and drives a luxury car, while he works hard on the outskirts of the city. Feng said that brother Zheng understood everything wrong, and in fact Yi helps him a lot and takes care of him. Xiao replied that if they really cared about him, he wouldn't have been beaten by those thugs. Shiguan's face changed sharply, asking Feng who beat him. Yi instantly boiled and hit the table. Li didn't think it would end like this. Shiguan asked Feng again who dared to do this to him, but Li simply lowered his eyes and remained silent. Xiao seemed to be enjoying the performance. Yi called his guard and ordered him to find out who dared to touch his brother and bring him here. After which he nervously lit a cigarette and told Zheng that he really didn't take good care of brother Li. But now that they are all together again, no one will ever dare to touch Feng in the future. Xiao stated that since Li followed him, he was responsible for him, and he had already found a job. Yi asked what he had found for himself. Zheng replied, "This is the most ordinary job." And Xiao understands that with Shiguan he would earn much more, but he does not intend to return to the past. Yi began to persuade Zheng to reunite again, offering him right now to transfer the club in the city center under his leadership. The main character replied that he appreciated his kindness, but he did not accept handouts. Shiguan noticed that of all the brothers, he had high hopes for him, but Xiao wanted to live an ordinary life. Saying that if he talks about this again, he will leave, Shiguan promised not to touch this topic again. At this moment, one of the guards hurried to inform the boss that they had brought Xiang Dong, who, in turn, already understood that nothing good awaited him in the next few minutes. Dong began to ask for forgiveness from the boss and say that he was wrong. Meanwhile, the bodyguard reported Zhong's presence to Shiguan. He stated that even if the Heavenly King himself had appeared to him, it still would not have saved Dun from his fate. Shiguan took the baseball bat and immediately walked towards the frightened Xiang Dong. Yi looked into his eyes and asked whether it was an arm or a leg. Dong admitted his guilt, saying that he was wrong. Yi stated that no one has the right to touch his people, after which he struck Dong in the knee with a bat. As a result, the bat broke into 2 parts, and Xiang screamed like crazy and rolled on the floor in pain. Shiguan calmly returned to his seat, and urged Feng to always say whose brother he is, in order to avoid such situations. At this time, Zhong entered and, seeing this picture, instantly ran up to the boss. And he asked what Dong had already done. Shiguan ordered him to take Xiang away and personally ask him about what had happened. He naturally obeyed him and went to pick up the injured Dong. At the same time, he turned his attention to Xiao Zheng and was extremely surprised by his presence. Shiguan said that his subordinates did not know or understand anything, but he allowed him to see this ridicule. Zheng noted that if he had not intervened, Feng might never have returned. He suggested that the main character was in the mood, and now they could calmly drink. What Xiao asked about, Zheng gladly kept him company and they began to drink. At that moment, voices began to be heard from the corridor. Yi turned around, and he saw the joyful He Xiong. Shiguan said that brother Zheng had already been waiting for him. Xiong said that he really missed his brother Xiao, and rushed at him with brotherly hugs. He began to ask him where he had been all these years, because Xiong already wanted to write a missing person report. Yi, making fun of him, said that with his knowledge of the language he would hardly have succeeded. Xiong would have relied on Shiguan in this matter. He informed Zheng that he could no longer disappear without a trace, otherwise he would order the entire underworld to look for him. And he encouraged everyone to drink themselves into unconsciousness, which is what they did, drinking glass after glass while chatting about life. Overall, Xiao had a good time. Late in the evening they said goodbye. He asked Zheng to leave his home address so that they could meet again. Calling out to Feng, Xiong also invited him to drink with them next time. Humble Li naturally agreed, smiling back at He. Shigon also said goodbye to them, urging them to be careful on the road. The main character got into the back seat and they went home. Xiao noticed that Feng was no longer as close to Xiong. Li began to talk about Shiguang, who had now become an important person in Mingzhu. And at the moment, Yi has enormous power, and even Master Zhao Si began to respect He. Li said he had become a third-rate driver with a broken leg and his presence was putting them in an awkward position. Xiao began to remember and say that Feng used to be a first-class racer, and always confident in himself. Adding that this is not very like him, Li noted that all people change, because Zheng also changed. The main character went to work on the night shift, and was already waiting for the elevator, the doors of which opened a couple of seconds later, and Xiao saw the racing champion. He never expected to meet him. The racer said that this was an incredible coincidence, because he was looking for it, because manager Shen just asked him to go to Zheng, to invite him for a cup of coffee, on the top floor, in the company of Manjun. Xiao thought that today was an auspicious day, since Shiguan had invited him, and now Shen had invited him. The race champion honestly didn't understand what Manjun saw in this guard. Zheng agreed to have a cup of coffee with Shen, but said that he had to report to work first. When Xiao came to the security department, he told his friend Tang about this. Min was simply shocked, saying that he had incredible luck with women. Having said that Manjun is the general manager of the Empire State Building, and she is responsible for the entire building. Tang noted that no one would dare to deal with Shuyin or provoke her, but Shen constantly puts a spoke in her wheels. And don't underestimate Manjun, and she can do anything. Even Lin respects her to some extent. And since she is the owner of the Empire State Building, she is incredibly rich, and her wealth can only be envied. In addition, she is also the mistress of Master Zhao Si, the leader of the Triad. Xiao realized that they did not get along with Shuyin, after which he changed into his work uniform and headed to the top floor of the restaurant, where he began looking for Manjun. Zheng replayed Ming's words in his head that it was better not to provoke Shen, as she would devour him and not choke. Walking over to the table where manager Shen was sitting, he greeted her. Manjun, in turn, offered him coffee, because this could not be found in all of Mingzhu. Xiao noticed that something rare may be very valuable, but this does not mean that everyone will definitely like it, without exception. Then Shen invited him to drink a cup of cold water. Zheng asked her to get straight to the point, and asked why she wanted to see him. Manjun replied that she didn't need a reason to see a man she was interested in. Xiao proudly stated that he was married. Shen noted that in modern society every man has a very close girlfriend, adding that although she is a pretty girl, he is not eager to become her close friend. In addition, he still has no sympathy for her, and he does not like that she puts herself above others. Manjun smiled and said that he just doesn't know her very well. Zheng replied that he was not interested in getting to know her better. Just like this cup of coffee, although it is good and perhaps it is an exquisite work, but he is not interested. Shen stated that men often want new and exciting experiences, so they challenge themselves. Zheng said if she knew what he went through, she would never have thought that way. After which, Xiao got up from the table and asked if she had anything else to tell him. At this moment, Manjun began to tell his entire file, where he studied, where he lived and what he did in recent years, and even about an incident in the army, because of which he lost his military service and wandered in poverty. The main character freaked out and slammed the table menacingly, shouting that she had no right to rummage through his past, saying that he was doing all this in order to show his capabilities. Shen replied that it was not difficult for her to find out about it, adding that people like her are much more interesting than Lin Shuyin. Xiao realized that she wanted to use him in her planned revenge against Shuyin, which means Tang was right. Zheng decided to play her game. Sitting back at the table, he stated that her approach only aroused hostility in him. Manjun replied that in Mingzhu alone there were many men who would like to kill her. However, even they would use the opportunity to get to know her very closely. Zheng was well aware of what she was trying to achieve and roughly understood what methods she would take. Shen smiled again and said that she wanted to become his close friend. The main character couldn't get Manhwa's words out of his head, who said that sooner or later Xiao would be friends with her. And it was only a matter of time. Zheng understood that it did not matter who was the target, he or Shuyin. Xiao called his friend and asked him to check something for him. Meanwhile, Manhwa's subordinate, a recent racing champion, hurried to her with another report. Having said that Shiguan was also looking for Zheng, which interested Shen even more. After all, Yi had previously relied on Xiao to build his reputation, otherwise he would not have entered Long Ye's entourage. Manjun suggested that Shiguan was supposed to share the territory of rule with Zhen. But Yi will never voluntarily give something, even to his brother. The racing champion did not approve of Shen's passion for some security guard. In response, she stated that she was not obligated to discuss such things with him. The driver asked her forgiveness. Manjun ordered him to prepare a gift for her father's birthday and return to his work. Late at night, Zheng's phone suddenly rang, and he discovered that the number was classified. Xiao picked up the phone, where he was told that the person he asked to know about is not as simple as it seems. Shen was 28 years old, and at 18 she went to the United States and received 2 master's degrees from the University of Michigan. And basically information about her is strictly confidential, but we managed to find out that Manjun is the daughter of Zhao Si himself. Zheng was shocked by this information. When he returned home, he saw a cheerful Xiao Men. Xiao asked why she was laughing so much. Men said that she was watching a drama about an idol, with an enchanting plot. Tired Zheng sat down on the sofa with her and Xiao Men asked him how he met her sister. Xiao replied that in fact, her sister was actually running after him and did not allow him to pass, which Xiao Men strongly doubted, asking him in surprise whether Zheng was telling the truth. After all, she never thought that her reserved little sister would run after someone like Xiao. Zheng told her a story about how one day they started harassing her in one of the bars, and he, like a prince on a white horse, stood up for her. As a result, he drove away all this evil spirits, and after that her sister could not resist and splashed out her feelings on him. Men collapsed on the sofa and began to laugh loudly. Xiao decided to play a joke on her. Zheng began to tickle her even more, and Xiao Men laughed even louder. However, it was at this moment that Lin Shuyin entered the house and was horrified by what she saw. She immediately rushed to push him away from her sister, telling him to leave their house. After all, Lin never thought that Zheng would actually be such a person. Xiao said that she misunderstood everything, and she and Xiao Men were just fooling around. Shuyin said that Men is only turning 17 this year, but he dares to let his hands go and lie blatantly. She then turned to her sister and urged her to call the police immediately. But Xiao Men sided with Zheng, saying that she really misunderstood him. Then Shuyin took out her phone and said that she would personally report Xiao to the police. At this moment, Men snatched the phone from her and ran to the side, saying that she was not even listening and did not believe her words. Adding that she doesn't even know what Xiao really is, Lin accused her of being naive and excessively stupid. The main character tried to intervene, saying that they were sisters and should not quarrel. Shuyin sharply pushed him away and demanded that he immediately get out of her house. Men said that she should not kick him out, noticing her arrogance, because she judges everyone by her standards. Xiao Men asked Lin to step aside so that she could pass, and Shuyin, in turn, tried to calm her down. As a result, the younger sister stumbled and fell to the floor with a crash. The main character and Lin were terrified, and immediately rushed to help Men get up. Wondering if she was okay, Xiao Men replied that she was fine. Shuyin ordered Zheng not to approach her, and again demanded that he leave. Men said that in this case she would leave with him, after which they ran out into the street. After some time, a worried Lin went outside to find her sister. Shouting her name, she wandered through the dark alleys, and suddenly twisted her ankle. Meanwhile, Zheng tried to calm down Men, who believed that her sister did not love her and was always dissatisfied with everything. Xiao said that that's why Lin reacted like that, because she cares about her extremely, and naturally loves her. At that moment, they saw barefoot Shuyin, who asked her to return home. Xiao Men asked what was wrong with her leg and sat her down on a bench. Lin replied that she had accidentally twisted it through negligence. Zheng began to actively knead her leg and palpate the bones to see if there was a fracture. Xiao stated that her leg was swollen and red and therefore needed to be iced. Men asked Zheng to carry her sister in his arms, since she could not walk normally. What confused Shuyin extremely, she didn't particularly like this idea, but there was no other choice. While Xiao was carrying Lin in his arms, she thought that he was not such a bad person. Having brought it home, Shuyin rather reluctantly thanked him. The main character, in turn, was extremely surprised, since one usually does not expect such a reaction from her. Breaking into a smile, Zheng kindly replied that there was no need to thank him. After which, they all went to their rooms and fell asleep peacefully. The next morning, I slept in my bed and didn't suspect anything. However, a little pest named Xiaomen decided to wake him up, saying that he should wake up quickly and go to meet great feats. Zheng said that today was Saturday and asked why she got up so early. Then he turned in the other direction. Men replied that today they decided to go shopping. Xiao congratulated them on this, but he couldn't understand why they needed him in the store. Xiaomen said sadly that sometimes she felt like crying because of his stupidity. Zheng did not understand what she was talking about and asked why she was so stupid and what she meant. Men stated that she decided to bring her and her sister a little closer, because at the moment, they don't really get along with her. After some time, they all went shopping together. Even Xiao was transformed. This is what men told him, saying that now he at least looked like a human being. Zheng noticed that she was acting rather impudently, and it did not suit her. Meanwhile, Shuyin asked if they were ready to see her in a new image. After which, she came out to them from the fitting room in a new dress. Xiao and men were shocked. After all, Lin really looked much more attractive than usual, but still with the same sad face. Shuyin said that she looks rather strange in this dress and it doesn't suit her. Zheng and Xiaomen hastened to convince her of this, saying how beautiful she looks in this outfit. The main character was completely smitten, saying that she should have dressed like that before. Lin modestly replied that in that case they would move on. After a short period of time, they walked around several shops. Xiaomen hovered around her sister and offered her various dresses. However, it was not so for the picky Shuyin, who said that she didn't like the neckline too deep. At this time, the saleswoman was annoyed that they tried on so many outfits, but did not buy anything. At a certain point, Zheng decided to help them decide on a choice, and offered her another dress. Lin finally agreed that it was very beautiful and she really liked it. The saleswoman stated that this was a limited edition outfit designed by their designer, and there were very few of them left. Xiaomen asked her to take the dress off the mannequin and help her sister try it on. But at that moment, a girl came up and said that she wanted to buy this outfit. The seller kindly agreed to wrap this dress and give it to the girl. Men was furious and asked why she was selling her this outfit if they were the first. The saleswoman asked for forgiveness and offered to look at another outfit. Lin asked why this was happening and what she meant. The girl replied that she spent half a day choosing clothes, but she didn't buy anything, because she doesn't have that much money. Shuyin hastened to convince her otherwise, and said that she could afford any dress. Then she gave the saleswoman the client's VIP card, telling her to pack this outfit for her. Everyone was shocked by such an unexpected turn of events. Zheng also decided to speak out, saying that these angel clothes were designed by the designer Olivet, and not many people will be able to wear it, especially with a figure like hers, because she will simply wear it out. The girl literally flew into a rage in a couple of seconds, but could not do anything. Xiaomen noted that his last comment was right on point, and she didn't expect that such an adult man like him was studying women's clothing. Then they all headed to a cafe together to have a snack. The main character stated that he is actually well versed in women's clothing. Lin suggested that Xiao had many women, which is why he understands them so well. This thought made her jealous, and nervously knocking on the table, Lin said that she needed to go to the restroom. Zheng could not understand why Shuyin suddenly became angry, and most importantly, why. Xiaomen was also puzzled and did not understand why she had such a reaction. She said that she would go with her sister. Xiao understood that a woman's heart is like a deep ocean, full of various secrets, and as soon as he decided to have a snack, someone's woman's hand sharply slammed the table. Zheng raised his head and found Manjun in front of him, whom he had never expected to meet here. Shun sat down at his table and asked why he and Shuyin had quarreled. Xiao asked her a counter-question, why this began to bother her so much, and what she was doing here. Manjun said that she saw Lin get angry for some reason and immediately ran to the restroom, adding that if he stays with Shuyin, he will only suffer from her sudden mood swings, and besides, she is too proud. Xiao asked her how she knew everything about Lin, suggesting that he had made inquiries about her too. Shen said that during her student years, they were roommates at the university, and therefore she knows a lot about her. Noticing that in their relationship with Shuyin, there is absolutely no harmony, not to mention any feelings. Zheng said that the actions of manager Manjun have already crossed all permitted boundaries. In response, Shen abruptly stood up from the table and, smiling, reached out to Xiao, saying that she does all this just for the sake of him looking in her direction, after which she suddenly sat down next to him and began to hug him. Zheng asked her to move away from him. It was at this moment that Lin and Xiaomen returned from the restroom and saw this nasty picture. Shuyin stood silently and watched what was happening, which could not be said about the younger sister Men, which at the same second, poured a glass of water at Xiao Zheng, while insulting him in a rather rude manner. The main character was at a loss and did not know what to say or how to react in this situation, so he decided to just remain silent while Xiaomen continued to be rude and go crazy. At this time, Manjun decided to intervene and asked if Zheng was Shuyin's personal property, and why then does her younger sister allow herself to make such statements. Lin, in turn, tried to calm down Xiaomen, saying that there was no point in wasting time on this Shen. Manjun said that Lin always looks down on everyone and literally infuriates her every time they meet, after which, she turned to Xiao and said that he was now being shown in far from the best light. Zheng replied that Shen was still trying to make friends with him, and was constantly pursuing him, which, as it turned out, offended the arrogant lady Manjun, who at the same moment hurried to leave this establishment. The main character calmly lit a cigarette, when suddenly his phone rang. Looking at it, Xiao noticed that it was Shiguan calling. He picked up the phone and asked what was the matter. Yi stated that He Xiong was in trouble and asked Zheng to come quickly to the Lonely Pearl. Xiao, in turn, naturally agreed and said he would arrive soon, but he himself began to think about what could have already happened. One of Shiguan's subordinates asked whether Zheng would definitely come to the Lonely Pearl. Yi said that Xiao is very close to Xiong, and he will definitely appear, because that's why He acted as bait. The bodyguard noted that in this way they would not only seize the territory, but also take care of Zheng. Shiguan threw out the cigarette butt and hurried him to give Master Zhao Si a birthday gift. After some time, influential people increasingly began to fill in the Lonely Pearl. Chen Chong was horrified to see Yi, and asked how he had the courage to come here, and specifically on his birthday. Zhao Si said that whoever walked through the front door is their guest, and they shouldn't behave like that. Zhao said that since Shiguan had come, he should join the celebration, and asked him to sit down at the table. He replied that he came here not only to congratulate him on his birthday, but also to tell him some news. Master Si asked what kind of news it was that made him personally come here. Yi absolutely calmly stated that from today, the Dongqing area will be under his control. Chen Chong immediately became enraged and declared that this would never happen, saying that this area has always belonged and will belong to his family. Then he asked since when it became his. At this time, He decided to intervene in the conversation, saying that the main rule of the underworld is that the winner takes all. Master Zhao Si agreed with his words. One way or another, the winner really gets all the benefits. However, what belongs to his Zhao family may be given away, lost, or even sold, but not stolen. Shiguan lit a cigarette and looked at Master Si and asked what he intended to do in this case. Zhao replied that anyone who dares to steal his property, he will force him to return it back, of which there can be no doubt. And if such a person still does not want to return what was stolen, then he will be beaten until he does so. At this moment, Chen slowly stood up from his chair and directed his menacing gaze at Yi. He said that he would deal with this upstart himself.